The volcanic death world of Nocturne spins through the void in a perpetual dance of destruction and renewal, its surface scarred by endless eruptions and seismic upheavals that would reduce most human settlements to ash and memory. Yet it was upon this hellish world that one of the Emperor's greatest sons would be cast during the scattering of the Primarchs, his arrival witnessed by the hardy tribes who had learned to survive in harmony with their world's violent temperament. The infant Primarch fell to Nocturne like a burning star, his descent pod slamming into the rocky terrain near the settlement of Hesiod. The impact crater still smoldered when Nabel, a blacksmith of considerable skill and standing within his community, discovered the child within the wreckage. The infant showed no signs of distress despite the circumstances of his arrival, his dark skin already bearing the distinctive coal-black pigmentation that marked him as adapted to Nocturne's harsh environment. Nabel, recognizing something extraordinary in the child's bearing and the strange circumstances of his discovery, took him into his household and named him Vulkan. Even as a youth, Vulkan displayed abilities that set him apart from his adoptive kinsmen. His strength surpassed that of grown warriors while he remained barely adolescent, and his skill at the forge exceeded that of master craftsmen who had spent decades perfecting their art. The young Primarch possessed an intuitive understanding of metallurgy and engineering that allowed him to create tools and weapons of unprecedented quality. His creations became legendary throughout the scattered settlements of Nocturne, each piece bearing the distinctive craftsmanship that would later become the hallmark of his legion. The tribal culture of Nocturne shaped Vulkan's development in ways that would profoundly influence his future legion. The Nocturnians lived in small, tightly knit communities scattered across their world's more stable regions, each settlement forced to be self-sufficient due to the constant threat of volcanic activity that could cut off communication and trade routes without warning. This isolation bred a culture of mutual dependence and fierce loyalty, where every member of the community contributed to the survival of the whole. The concept of self-sacrifice for the greater good became deeply ingrained in Nocturnian society, as did the belief that strength should be used to protect those who could not protect themselves. The harsh environment of Nocturne also fostered a deep respect for craftsmanship and the transformation of raw materials into useful tools. The planet's volcanic activity provided access to rare minerals and metals, but extracting and working these materials required exceptional skill and patience. Vulkan excelled in this environment, becoming not just a warrior of unmatched prowess, but also a craftsman whose works were sought after across the planet. His reputation grew with each passing year, and tales of his deeds spread from settlement to settlement despite the geographical barriers that separated them. Meanwhile, far from Nocturne's volcanic peaks, the 18th Legion of the Adeptus Astartes was taking shape on Terra under the Emperor's direct oversight. These early Space Marines drew their genetic material from the Primarch Vulkan, though they remained unaware of their progenitor's identity or location. The Legion's initial recruits came from Terra's diverse population, selected for their physical and mental resilience rather than any specific cultural background. This early iteration of the 18th Legion displayed certain distinctive characteristics that would later be recognized as manifestations of their Primarch's genetic legacy. The Terran-born Astartes of the 18th Legion showed an unusual aptitude for siege warfare and defensive operations, preferring methodical, grinding campaigns to swift strikes. They demonstrated exceptional resilience in the face of overwhelming odds, often fighting to the last man rather than retreating from untenable positions. Their approach to warfare emphasized the protection of human civilians and the preservation of infrastructure wherever possible, setting them apart from some of their more aggressive brother legions. These traits, while admirable, sometimes put them at odds with the rapid conquest objectives of the early Great Crusade. The Legion's Terran officers noted their warriors' tendency toward perfectionism in equipment maintenance and modification. Individual Astartes would spend considerable time customizing their weapons and armor, often incorporating non-standard components or decorative elements that served no tactical purpose beyond personal satisfaction. This behavior was initially viewed with concern by some Imperial commanders, who worried about standardization and supply logistics, but the consistent performance of the 18th Legion's modified equipment gradually won acceptance for these practices. When the Emperor's expanding crusade fleets finally reached Nocturne, the meeting between father and son took on legendary proportions that would be retold throughout the Legion for millennia to come. The Emperor did not simply reveal himself to Vulkan and demand recognition, as had occurred with some other Primarchs. Instead, he chose to test his son through a series of contests that would demonstrate not only Vulkan's physical capabilities, but also his character and worthiness to lead a legion of Astartes. The first contest involved smithcraft, the skill that had made Vulkan renowned across Nocturne. The Emperor challenged the Primarch to forge a weapon that would surpass any created before, using materials and techniques of their own choosing. Vulkan labored for days at his forge, drawing upon knowledge that seemed to flow from his very genetic coding. He created a weapon of such exceptional quality that it would later become one of the Legion's most treasured relics. The Emperor, working with equal skill but different techniques, produced a blade of comparable magnificence. The contest was declared a draw, with both participants acknowledging the other's mastery. The second trial tested physical prowess through a hunt for one of Nocturne's most dangerous predators, the massive salamanders that gave their name to the world's most feared creatures. These reptilian beasts, adapted to survive in lava flows and volcanic vents, possessed hides tough enough to turn aside most weapons and strength sufficient to crush armored vehicles. The Emperor and Vulkan tracked separate creatures through the treacherous volcanic terrain, each seeking to prove their hunting skills. Both returned successful, having slain their quarry through different but equally effective methods. The final contest involved a race to the summit of Mount Deathfire, Nocturne's largest and most active volcano. The ascent required not only physical endurance, but also the tactical thinking necessary to navigate the constantly shifting hazards of an active volcanic system. Rock slides, toxic gas vents, and sudden eruptions created obstacles that could prove fatal even to superhuman physiology. Vulkan's intimate knowledge of his homeworld's geology gave him certain advantages, but the Emperor's broader experience and tactical acumen balanced the scales. The race concluded with both participants reaching the summit simultaneously, their mutual respect established through shared trials. These contests served multiple purposes beyond simple testing. They demonstrated to the people of Nocturne that their champion had found his equal in the mysterious stranger who claimed dominion over the stars. The trials also established the template for how the Salamanders would later evaluate their own members, emphasizing not just martial prowess, but also craftsmanship, endurance, and the ability to overcome seemingly impossible challenges through determination and skill. The reunion between Vulkan and his legion marked the beginning of a profound transformation that went far beyond simple command structure changes. The Terran-born Astartes of the 18th Legion found themselves inheriting not just a Primarch, but an entire cultural framework that would reshape their identity. Vulkan did not simply impose Nocturnian customs upon his sons. Instead, he carefully integrated the best aspects of both Terran military doctrine and Nocturnian cultural values. The process of transformation began with the Legion's recruitment practices. While maintaining their Terran recruiting grounds, the Salamanders began drawing heavily from Nocturne's population. The world's harsh environment had already selected for individuals with exceptional physical and mental resilience, making them ideal candidates for Astartes transformation. More importantly, these recruits brought with them the cultural values that Vulkan sought to instill throughout his legion: loyalty to one's brothers, protection of the innocent, and pride in craftsmanship. The integration of Nocturnian recruits with Terran veterans created a unique dynamic within the Legion. The Terran Astartes possessed superior military training and combat experience gained during the early years of the Great Crusade, while the Nocturnian recruits brought cultural practices and survival skills adapted to one of the galaxy's most hostile environments. Rather than creating division, this combination proved synergistic, with each group learning from the other's strengths. Vulkan personally oversaw the establishment of new training protocols that incorporated elements of Nocturnian tribal customs. Aspirants were required to demonstrate not only combat proficiency, but also skill in craftsmanship, creating their own weapons and armor components as part of their initiation. This practice served multiple purposes. It ensured that every salamander possessed the technical skills necessary to maintain and modify their equipment in the field. It fostered the perfectionist attitude that would become a Legion hallmark, and it created a personal connection between warrior and weapon that enhanced combat effectiveness. The Legion's organizational structure also evolved to reflect Nocturnian tribal practices. While maintaining the standard Astartes company organization required by Imperial doctrine, the Salamanders developed informal kinship networks that crossed company boundaries. These bonds, based on shared trials and mutual respect rather than formal hierarchy, created a support system that enhanced unit cohesion and morale. Veterans took personal responsibility for training new recruits, creating mentor-student relationships that often lasted for centuries. The adoption of Nocturnian religious and philosophical beliefs proved more complex than simple cultural integration. The people of Nocturne worshipped the volcanic forces that shaped their world, viewing destruction and creation as two aspects of the same fundamental process. This worldview aligned surprisingly well with the Imperial truth's emphasis on human achievement through struggle and adaptation. Vulkan was able to synthesize these beliefs into a coherent philosophy that satisfied both Imperial requirements and his Legion's cultural needs. The transformation of the 18th Legion into the Salamanders represented more than a simple name change or cultural adoption. It marked the emergence of a unique fighting force that combined the best aspects of Terran military doctrine with the resilience and craftsmanship traditions of Nocturne. The Legion's new identity would be tested and refined through the campaigns of the Great Crusade, but the foundation laid during this period of integration would endure for 10,000 years. Among the 20 Primarchs scattered across the galaxy by the machinations of chaos, Vulkan possessed a gift that set him apart from all his brothers, the curse and blessing of perpetual life. This extraordinary nature meant that death, while painful and traumatic, could never claim him permanently. His body would regenerate from the most grievous wounds. His consciousness would return even after complete physical destruction, marking him as one of the rarest beings in the galaxy. This perpetual nature was not merely a biological curiosity, but a fundamental aspect of his character that influenced every decision he made and every relationship he forged. The discovery of his immortal nature came gradually during his youth on Nocturne. Nabel, his adoptive father, witnessed the young Primarch survive accidents that should have proven fatal to any normal human. Molten metal splashes that would have killed experienced smiths left only temporary marks on Vulkan's flesh. Cave-ins that crushed stone and metal barely slowed his movements. Each incident revealed more clearly that this adopted son possessed capabilities far beyond those of ordinary mortals. Even the hardy Nocturnians who had adapted to their world's volcanic fury over generations of natural selection. This immortal nature shaped Vulkan's perspective on life and death in ways that distinguished him from his brothers. Where other Primarchs might charge headlong into battle secure in their superhuman abilities, Vulkan understood that true death was a permanent ending for those around him, his sons, his people, the innocent civilians caught in war's path. This knowledge bred in him a deep compassion that manifested as protective instincts toward those who could not regenerate from mortal wounds. He became the most humanitarian of the Primarchs, viewing his immortality not as a license for reckless heroics, but as a responsibility to shield others from harm. The perpetual gift also granted Vulkan patience that his brothers often lacked. Knowing that he had potentially infinite time to perfect his skills, complete his projects, and achieve his goals, he approached every task with methodical precision. This patience extended to his treatment of subordinates and allies, making him remarkably tolerant of human failings and willing to invest enormous effort in training and developing those under his command. His Salamanders inherited this approach, becoming known throughout the Legion's Astartes for their careful preparation and thorough execution of military operations. Vulkan's mastery of the forge transcended mere technical skill, representing an almost mystical connection between the Primarch and the fundamental forces of creation and destruction. His workshops on Nocturne became legendary not just for the quality of weapons and tools produced there, but for the innovative techniques and materials he developed. The volcanic environment of his homeworld provided access to exotic minerals and rare elements, but it was Vulkan's genius that transformed these raw materials into artifacts of unprecedented power and durability. The Primarch's approach to smithcraft differed fundamentally from the mechanized production methods favored by the Adeptus Mechanicus. Where the tech priests relied on ancient patterns and ritualized procedures, Vulkan treated each creation as a unique challenge requiring individual solutions. He would spend months studying the properties of new materials, testing different alloy compositions, and experimenting with forging techniques that pushed the boundaries of what was considered possible. His workshop contained furnaces that burned hotter than most starship engines, powered by carefully channeled geothermal energy from Nocturne's volcanic core. The legendary artifacts of Vulkan represented the pinnacle of the Primarch's craftsmanship, each piece designed to serve specific purposes in the hands of his most trusted sons. These were not merely weapons or tools, but expressions of Vulkan's philosophy made manifest in metal and energy. The Spear of Vulkan, with its ability to pierce any armor and burn with the heat of a star's core, embodied his belief that overwhelming force applied precisely could end conflicts quickly and minimize casualties. The Gauntlet of the Forge combined defensive protection with the ability to shape metal through direct manipulation, representing the dual nature of creation and destruction that defined Nocturnian culture. Each artifact required years of preparation and months of actual forging time. Vulkan would begin by meditating on the intended purpose of the piece, considering not just its immediate tactical applications, but its symbolic meaning and long-term implications for his legion. He gathered materials from across the galaxy, trading favors with rogue traders and explorator fleets to acquire rare elements that existed only in the hearts of dying stars or the cores of shattered worlds. The forging process itself became a ritual that combined advanced metallurgy with psychic manipulation, as Vulkan's perpetual nature allowed him to channel energies that would have destroyed lesser beings. The creation of these artifacts served multiple purposes beyond their obvious tactical value. They demonstrated to his sons the heights of achievement possible through dedication and skill, inspiring them to push their own craftsmanship to new levels. The artifacts also served as teaching tools, with Vulkan using their construction to illustrate principles of engineering, materials science, and tactical application. Most importantly, they represented his personal investment in his legion's success, tangible proof of his commitment to providing his sons with every possible advantage in their coming battles. Vulkan's philosophy centered on three fundamental principles that would guide the Salamanders throughout their existence: self-reliance, endurance, and the protection of humanity above all other considerations. These concepts were not abstract ideals, but practical guidelines derived from his experiences on Nocturne and his understanding of humanity's place in a hostile galaxy. Self-reliance meant that every individual, whether Primarch, Astartes, or baseline human, must develop the skills and strength necessary to survive without depending entirely on others. This did not mean isolation or selfishness, but rather the cultivation of personal capabilities that could contribute to collective survival. The principle of self-reliance extended beyond individual development to encompass technological and logistical independence. Vulkan insisted that his legion maintain the ability to manufacture their own equipment, repair their own vehicles, and sustain themselves in the field without relying on external supply lines. This philosophy proved prescient during the dark years following the Horus Heresy, when the Salamanders' technical expertise allowed them to maintain combat effectiveness despite being cut off from many Imperial resources. Every battle brother learned not just how to use his weapons and armor, but how to maintain, modify, and if necessary, rebuild them from salvaged materials. Endurance, the second pillar of Vulkan's philosophy, encompassed both physical resilience and mental fortitude. The harsh environment of Nocturne had taught him that survival often depended not on avoiding hardship, but on outlasting it. Volcanic eruptions, seismic upheavals, and toxic atmospheric conditions were facts of life that had to be endured rather than escaped. This lesson translated directly to military doctrine, with the Salamanders becoming renowned for their ability to maintain combat effectiveness under conditions that would break other forces. They specialized in prolonged sieges, defensive operations, and campaigns in hostile environments where their superior endurance provided decisive advantages. The concept of endurance also applied to moral and ethical standards. Vulkan taught his sons that maintaining their humanity and compassion in the face of war's brutality required constant effort and unwavering commitment. It would have been easier to adopt the callous pragmatism displayed by some other legions, treating civilian casualties as acceptable losses and viewing non-Astartes humans as expendable resources. Instead, the Salamanders were expected to endure the additional burden of protecting innocents, even when doing so complicated their tactical objectives or increased their own casualties. The protection of humanity represented the ultimate expression of Vulkan's values and the primary justification for the Salamanders' existence. This principle went far beyond simple compliance with Imperial doctrine regarding civilian populations. Where other legions might interpret their duty as conquering worlds for the Emperor's domain, the Salamanders viewed their mission as safeguarding human lives and preserving human civilization. This distinction led to tactical approaches that prioritized minimizing collateral damage, even when more destructive methods might have achieved objectives more quickly. Vulkan's interpretation of protecting humanity extended to preserving human culture and knowledge alongside human lives. The Salamanders became known for their efforts to catalog and preserve the artistic and technological achievements of worlds they conquered, viewing these cultural artifacts as irreplaceable treasures that enriched the broader human experience. This approach sometimes put them at odds with more pragmatic commanders who saw such concerns as unnecessary complications, but Vulkan remained convinced that humanity's diversity and creativity were among its greatest strengths. The Primarch's mysterious disappearance during the War of the Beast marked the beginning of one of the most enduring legends in Salamander's lore. Unlike some of his brothers who fell in battle or succumbed to corruption, Vulkan simply vanished without explanation, leaving behind only cryptic references to a great work that required his personal attention. The circumstances of his departure were witnessed by only a few of his most trusted captains, who reported that he spoke of obligations that transcended even his duties to the Legion and the Imperium. The timing of Vulkan's disappearance coincided with increasing orc activity throughout the galaxy, suggesting a connection between his departure and the growing threat posed by the greenskin menace. Some scholars theorize that his perpetual nature allowed him to perceive temporal patterns invisible to normal consciousness, granting him awareness of future threats that required preemptive action. Others suggest that his disappearance was connected to the artifacts of Vulkan, possibly indicating that these legendary items were components of a larger design that required his personal oversight to complete. The prophecy of Vulkan's return, encoded in ancient Nocturnian religious texts and reinforced by visions experienced by the Legion's chaplains, speaks of a time when humanity faces its darkest hour and the Forge Father will emerge from the fires of creation to lead his sons once more. This prophecy has sustained the Salamanders through 10 millennia of warfare, providing hope during their most desperate struggles and reinforcing their commitment to the principles their Primarch established. The prophecy describes signs and portents that will herald his return, though their interpretation remains a matter of debate among the Legion's leadership. The enduring influence of Vulkan's philosophy continues to shape the Salamander's actions in the 41st millennium, demonstrating the lasting power of his vision for what the Adeptus Astartes could become. His emphasis on craftsmanship has made them among the most technically proficient of all Space Marine chapters, capable of maintaining and improving their equipment in ways that would impress even the Adeptus Mechanicus. Their commitment to protecting human life has earned them the gratitude of countless Imperial worlds, creating a network of allies and supporters that extends far beyond their official area of operations. The philosophical foundation that guides the Salamanders emerges from the volcanic crucible of Nocturne itself, crystallized into 7 fundamental tenets that form the backbone of what the chapter calls the Promethean Creed. These principles represent more than mere military doctrine or religious observance. They constitute a comprehensive worldview that shapes every aspect of salamander existence, from their approach to warfare to their interactions with baseline humanity. The seven tenets draw their names and symbolism from the elemental forces that define Nocturnian existence, each one representing a different aspect of the forge-born wisdom that Vulkan instilled in his sons. The first tenet, known as the strength of the flame, establishes the primacy of inner fortitude over external circumstances. This principle teaches that true power comes not from superior weapons or numbers, but from the unbreakable will that burns within each battle brother. The flame metaphor carries deep significance in Nocturnian culture, where fire represents both destruction and purification, the force that melts raw ore into refined metal. Salamanders are taught to cultivate this inner flame through meditation, physical trials, and constant self-improvement, viewing personal weakness as the greatest enemy they can face. This tenet manifests in their legendary resistance to fear, pain, and despair, allowing them to function effectively under conditions that would break the morale of lesser warriors. The second tenet, the endurance of stone, emphasizes the importance of persistence and resilience in the face of overwhelming adversity. Drawing from Nocturne's geological stability amidst constant volcanic upheaval, this principle teaches that some battles cannot be won through swift action, but require the patience to outlast one's enemies. The Salamanders apply this philosophy to siege warfare, defensive operations, and long-term strategic planning, often accepting temporary setbacks in pursuit of ultimate victory. Their willingness to absorb punishment while maintaining combat effectiveness has made them invaluable in campaigns where other forces might falter or retreat. The third tenet, known as the wisdom of the forge, elevates craftsmanship and technical knowledge to the level of sacred duty. This principle holds that the act of creation is inherently superior to destruction, and that every salamander must contribute to the sum of human knowledge and capability through his own skills. The tenet requires battle brothers to master not only the arts of war, but also the sciences of metallurgy, engineering, and manufacturing. This emphasis on technical expertise has made the salamanders largely self-sufficient, capable of maintaining and improving their equipment without relying on external support from the Adeptus Mechanicus or Imperial supply chains. The fourth tenet, the honor of the ancestor, establishes the sacred obligation to preserve and transmit the accumulated wisdom of previous generations. Unlike some chapters that view their past primarily as a source of glorious battle honors, the Salamanders treat their history as a living repository of practical knowledge and moral guidance. Veterans are expected to serve as teachers and mentors, passing on not only tactical expertise, but also the cultural values that define the chapter's identity. This tenet ensures continuity of purpose across centuries and millennia, preventing the gradual drift in doctrine and philosophy that affects some long-lived military organizations. The fifth tenet, the loyalty of the brotherhood, codifies the bonds of mutual support and shared sacrifice that unite the chapter. This principle extends beyond simple military cooperation to encompass a genuine familial relationship among battle brothers, where each individual's welfare becomes the responsibility of all. The tenet requires salamanders to prioritize the survival and success of their brothers even at personal cost, creating a level of unit cohesion that surpasses even the already exceptional standards of the Adeptus Astartes. This brotherhood extends to include the human populations under their protection, viewing Imperial citizens as extended family members deserving of the same loyalty and sacrifice. The sixth tenet, the courage of the salamander, draws its symbolism from the great reptilian creatures that inhabit Nocturne's lava flows and volcanic vents. These beasts represent the ability to thrive in environments that would prove lethal to most life forms, adapting to extreme conditions through evolutionary resilience rather than avoiding danger entirely. The tenet teaches that true courage lies not in the absence of fear, but in the willingness to face necessary dangers despite personal risk. Salamanders are expected to volunteer for the most hazardous assignments, lead from the front in combat situations, and accept personal sacrifice when the mission or the protection of innocence demands it. The seventh tenet, the sanctity of life, establishes the fundamental principle that distinguishes the Salamanders from many other Astartes chapters. This tenet holds that human life possesses inherent value that transcends tactical considerations, strategic objectives, or personal glory. The principle requires battle brothers to exhaust all other options before accepting civilian casualties, to risk their own lives in defense of non-combatants, and to view the preservation of human communities as a primary mission objective rather than a secondary consideration. This philosophy has sometimes put the Salamanders at odds with Imperial commanders who favor more ruthless approaches, but the chapter has never wavered in its commitment to this principle. These 7 tenets work together to create a comprehensive ethical framework that governs Salamander behavior in all circumstances. The creed is not merely recited during ceremonial occasions, but actively applied to daily decision-making, from tactical planning to resource allocation to diplomatic negotiations. Young initiates spend years studying the philosophical implications of each tenet, learning to apply abstract principles to concrete situations they will encounter as full battle brothers. The integration of the Promethean Creed into chapter doctrine ensures that Salamander actions remain consistent with their core values regardless of external pressures or changing circumstances. The concept of self-reliance permeates every aspect of Salamander culture, extending far beyond individual survival skills to encompass technological independence, tactical flexibility, and philosophical autonomy. This principle emerged from the harsh realities of life on Nocturne, where isolated communities could not depend on external assistance during volcanic emergencies or seismic disasters. The Salamanders have translated this survival imperative into military doctrine, maintaining the capability to operate independently for extended periods without resupply or reinforcement from Imperial authorities. Self-reliance in the technical sphere manifests through the chapter's exceptional manufacturing capabilities, with each battle brother trained in multiple crafting disciplines beyond his primary military specialization. Company workshops produce not only standard weapons and equipment, but also specialized tools, vehicles, and even starship components when necessary. This technical independence has proven invaluable during campaigns in remote sectors where Imperial supply lines are unreliable or non-existent. The Salamanders can maintain full combat effectiveness using locally available materials and salvaged components, adapting their equipment to meet changing tactical requirements without waiting for approval or assistance from higher authorities. The principle of self-reliance also applies to tactical doctrine, with Salamander units trained to operate autonomously when communication with higher command is impossible or compromised. Squad leaders and company captains receive extensive training in independent decision-making, learning to interpret their overall mission objectives and adapt their methods to changing circumstances without requiring detailed orders. This flexibility has made them particularly effective in fluid combat situations where rigid adherence to predetermined plans would result in tactical failure. Self-sacrifice represents the natural complement to self-reliance in Salamander philosophy, recognizing that individual strength and independence must ultimately serve the greater good of humanity. This principle distinguishes between selfish self-sufficiency and the responsible independence that enables greater service to others. The Salamanders view their enhanced capabilities and extended lifespans as gifts that carry corresponding obligations, making them stewards of human welfare rather than masters of human destiny. The practical application of self-sacrifice appears in countless small decisions that collectively define the chapter's character. Battle brothers routinely volunteer for the most dangerous assignments, not from reckless bravado, but from calculated assessment of their superior ability to survive and complete essential missions. Veterans accept teaching duties that remove them from front-line combat, recognizing that their knowledge and experience can multiply their effectiveness by training the next generation of warriors. Company commanders make tactical decisions that prioritize civilian evacuation over rapid objective completion, accepting increased casualties among their own forces to minimize harm to non-combatants. The protection of human life stands as the ultimate expression of Salamander values, representing the synthesis of all other principles into a coherent mission statement. This commitment goes beyond the standard Imperial doctrine of protecting loyal citizens from external threats, encompassing active efforts to improve the lives and circumstances of human populations throughout the galaxy. The Salamanders view themselves as guardians of human potential, working to create conditions where baseline humanity can flourish and develop rather than merely survive. This protective instinct manifests in their approach to planetary compliance operations, where other chapters might employ overwhelming force to achieve rapid submission. The Salamanders prefer graduated responses that minimize casualties and preserve infrastructure, often spending months in negotiation and demonstration rather than days in bombardment and assault. Their reputation for restraint and mercy has made them effective diplomats in situations where imperial authority must be established without creating lasting resentment or resistance. The integration of Nocturnian tribal traditions into Astartes culture creates a unique synthesis that preserves ancient wisdom while adapting it to the realities of galactic warfare. The tribal customs of Nocturne evolved over millennia to address the specific challenges of survival on a volcanic death world, developing social structures and ritual practices that emphasized community solidarity, resource sharing, and collective decision-making. These traditions provide the Salamanders with cultural anchors that maintain their connection to baseline humanity despite their superhuman transformation. The ritual of the Burning Walk represents one of the most significant adaptations of Nocturnian tradition to Astartes practice. Originally performed by young Nocturnians as a coming-of-age ceremony, the ritual involves traversing a path across active lava flows while carrying sacred objects representing community values. The Salamanders have modified this practice for their initiates, creating trials that test not only physical endurance, but also moral commitment and tactical judgment. The modern Burning Walk requires aspirants to navigate through combat simulations while protecting civilian populations, demonstrating their ability to maintain the chapter's principles under extreme stress. The Feast of Malediction draws from ancient Nocturnian harvest festivals, but the Salamanders have transformed it into a ceremony honoring fallen battle brothers and remembering their contributions to the chapter's mission. The feast combines elements of mourning and celebration, acknowledging the reality of loss while affirming the continuity of the chapter's purpose. Battle brothers share stories of their deceased comrades, recounting not only their combat achievements, but also their acts of mercy, their technical innovations, and their mentorship of younger warriors. This practice ensures that individual contributions are remembered and integrated into the chapter's collective memory. The ritual of the Forge Blessing adapts traditional Nocturnian smithcraft ceremonies to the creation and maintenance of Astartes equipment. Before beginning work on any significant project, Salamander artificers perform ceremonies that invoke the guidance of their ancestors and dedicate their efforts to the protection of humanity. These rituals serve practical purposes beyond their symbolic significance, creating focused mental states that enhance precision and creativity while reinforcing the connection between craftsmanship and service. The blessing ceremonies also provide opportunities for knowledge transfer, as experienced artificers use the ritual framework to teach techniques and principles to their apprentices. The Salamanders' approach to civilian interaction sets them apart from virtually every other Astartes chapter, reflecting their fundamental belief that space marines exist to serve humanity rather than rule it. This philosophy manifests in countless small gestures and policy decisions that collectively create a reputation for accessibility and compassion that extends far beyond their official area of operations. Unlike chapters that maintain strict separation from baseline humans except during military operations, the Salamanders actively seek opportunities to engage with civilian populations and contribute to their welfare. Their reputation as protectors of the innocent has been earned through consistent actions across 10 millennia of service, creating a legacy that influences imperial policy and civilian expectations throughout entire sectors. Planetary governors specifically request salamander assistance when facing threats that endanger civilian populations, knowing that the chapter will prioritize evacuation and protection over rapid military solutions. This reputation has also made them targets for enemy forces seeking to exploit their protective instincts, but the Salamanders have learned to balance their humanitarian impulses with tactical necessity. The chapter maintains permanent liaison offices on dozens of worlds throughout their operational area, staffed by battle brothers who serve as advisors and emergency responders rather than military governors. These representatives work with local authorities to improve defensive preparations, disaster response capabilities, and industrial efficiency, sharing Astartes' expertise in ways that benefit entire populations. The Liaison program has created networks of allies and information sources that provide the Salamanders with intelligence advantages that complement their military capabilities. The death world of Nocturne spins through the void in a perpetual state of geological violence, its surface racked by constant seismic upheavals and volcanic eruptions that would reduce most human settlements to ash within hours. 7 massive shield volcanoes dominate the planetary landscape, their slopes rising from molten seas of lava to pierce the toxic atmosphere with peaks that glow red-hot against the perpetual twilight. These geological giants, Mount Deathfire, Scorius, Ignea, Themis, Ethon, Usharak, and Draconeth, serve as both the primary sources of the planet's instability and the foundations upon which human civilization has somehow managed to take root. Each of the 7 sanctuary cities was constructed around the base of these shield volcanoes, their locations chosen not despite the volcanic activity, but because of it. The constant flow of molten rock provides access to rare minerals and exotic metals that exist nowhere else in the galaxy, while the geothermal energy generated by the volcanic cores powers the massive industrial complexes that have made Nocturne one of the most productive forge worlds in the Imperium. The cities themselves represent marvels of engineering adaptation, their structures built from heat-resistant ceramics and specially treated metals that can withstand direct contact with lava flows while maintaining structural integrity through constant seismic tremors. Hesiod, the largest of the sanctuary cities, sprawls across the lower slopes of Mount Deathfire in a complex network of interconnected domes and underground passages. The city's architecture reflects the harsh realities of its environment, with thick walls designed to withstand pyroclastic flows and reinforced foundations that can flex with seismic movement without catastrophic failure. The streets between buildings are actually elevated walkways that allow lava flows to pass beneath inhabited areas, while emergency shelters carved deep into the volcanic rock provide refuge during the most severe eruptions. The population of Hesiod numbers in the millions, making it one of the largest human settlements on any death world in Imperial space. The industrial heart of Hesiod centers around the Great Forge, a massive complex of workshops and smelting facilities that extends deep into the volcanic slopes of Mount Deathfire itself. Here, master craftsmen work with materials heated to temperatures that would vaporize ordinary metals, using tools forged from alloys that exist only in the most extreme stellar environments. The workshops produce everything from basic agricultural implements for the outlying settlements to sophisticated weapons and armor components for the Salamanders chapter, with each piece bearing the distinctive quality that has made Nocturnian craftsmanship legendary throughout the sector. Ethonian, built around the base of Mount Ethon, serves as the primary mining center for the planet's exotic mineral extraction operations. The city's inhabitants specialize in deep core excavation techniques that allow them to harvest rare elements from active magma chambers while the volcanic systems remain operational. The mining operations require constant adaptation to changing geological conditions as new lava tubes open while others seal themselves with cooling rock. The miners of Ethonian have developed specialized equipment and techniques that allow them to work in environments where the ambient temperature exceeds the melting point of most known metals. Themis City occupies a unique position among the sanctuary cities, serving as the planet's primary agricultural center, despite the seemingly impossible challenge of growing crops on a world where the soil regularly reaches temperatures sufficient to ignite organic matter. The Themisian farmers have developed hydroponic systems that utilize geothermal energy to maintain controlled growing environments, producing food crops that can survive in the planet's toxic atmosphere while providing the nutrition necessary to sustain human life. The agricultural domes of Themis stretch for kilometers across the volcanic slopes, their transparent aluminum panels filtering the harsh radiation while allowing sufficient light to reach the carefully tended crops within. The remaining sanctuary cities, Skorian, Ignean, Ushorak, and Draconith, each developed specialized functions that contribute to the planet's overall survival and prosperity. Skorian focuses on atmospheric processing and water reclamation, using volcanic heat to distill drinkable water from the planet's acidic precipitation while filtering breathable air from the toxic atmospheric mix. Ignean serves as the planetary communications hub, its transmission arrays built to withstand electromagnetic interference from constant volcanic activity while maintaining contact with the wider Imperium. Ushorak specializes in vehicle and equipment maintenance, its workshops capable of repairing and modifying everything from simple farming tools to sophisticated spacecraft systems. Draconith functions as the planet's medical center, its hospitals and research facilities dedicated to treating the unique health challenges posed by constant exposure to volcanic radiation and toxic atmospheric conditions. The moon Prometheus orbits Nocturne at a distance that places it just outside the worst effects of the planet's volcanic emissions, while remaining close enough to serve as an effective staging area for planetary operations. Unlike its parent world, Prometheus maintains a stable geological structure that provides the solid foundation necessary for the construction of permanent military installations. The Salamanders chose this moon as the site for their primary fortress monastery, not only for its strategic advantages, but also for its symbolic significance as a place of refuge and preparation that overlooks their troubled homeworld. The Prometheus Fortress Monastery represents one of the most impressive examples of Astartes architecture in the galaxy. Its massive structure carved directly from the moon's bedrock and reinforced with materials that could withstand direct orbital bombardment. The fortress extends both above and below the lunar surface, with training facilities, workshops, armories, and living quarters distributed through dozens of levels that descend deep into the moon's core. The surface installations include landing bays capable of accommodating battle barges and strike cruisers, communications arrays that can reach across the galaxy, and defensive weapons systems that could repel invasion fleets. The training facilities on Prometheus recreate the environmental challenges of Nocturne while providing controlled conditions that allow for systematic skill development and evaluation. Vast chambers simulate the effects of volcanic eruptions, toxic atmospheric conditions, and extreme temperature variations, allowing aspirants and battle brothers to practice combat techniques under conditions that mirror their homeworld's hazards. The training complex includes specialized workshops where initiates learn the crafting skills that form such an important part of salamander culture, working with the same exotic materials and advanced techniques used by the chapter's master artificers. The fortress monastery's workshops and forges rival those found on any forge world in the Imperium, equipped with tools and materials that allow the salamanders to maintain complete independence in equipment production and maintenance. The lunar environment provides certain advantages for precision manufacturing, as the absence of atmospheric interference and seismic activity allows for extremely precise machining and assembly operations. The workshops produce not only standard Astartes equipment, but also the specialized tools and weapons that reflect the chapter's unique tactical doctrines and cultural preferences. The relationship between the salamanders and the population of Nocturne transcends the typical connection between an Astartes chapter and its recruiting world, representing instead a genuine symbiosis where both parties benefit from continued cooperation and mutual support. The chapter provides protection, technical expertise, and access to off-world resources that would otherwise be unavailable to the isolated communities of the Death World. In return, the Nocturnian population supplies not only recruits for the chapter, but also skilled craftsmen, technical specialists, and cultural traditions that enrich the Salamander's identity and capabilities. The recruitment process itself reflects this symbiotic relationship, as potential aspirants are identified not through random genetic screening, but through demonstrated excellence in the skills and values that the chapter prizes most highly. Young Nocturnians who show exceptional aptitude in craftsmanship, leadership, or protective instincts toward their communities attract the attention of Salamander recruiters, who observe potential candidates over extended periods before making selection decisions. This careful evaluation process ensures that new recruits already possess the cultural foundation necessary to integrate successfully into chapter traditions and philosophy. The trials faced by Salamander aspirants draw heavily from Nocturnian coming-of-age rituals, but they are intensified and modified to test the specific qualities required for Astartes transformation. The Trial of Fire requires candidates to forge their own weapons using traditional Nocturnian techniques while working in conditions that simulate the most extreme volcanic environments. The Trial of Endurance tests not only physical resilience, but also the mental fortitude necessary to maintain focus and determination during extended periods of hardship. The Trial of Sacrifice evaluates each candidate's willingness to place the welfare of others above personal safety or comfort, often through scenarios where success requires accepting personal risk to protect simulated civilian populations. The unique effects of Nocturne's volcanic radiation on human physiology create distinctive characteristics that mark the planet's inhabitants as clearly as any cultural tradition or technological adaptation. The constant exposure to exotic particles and electromagnetic fields generated by the volcanic activity triggers genetic modifications that accumulate over generations, producing physical traits that distinguish Nocturnians from baseline human populations throughout the rest of the galaxy. These radiation-induced changes affect not only appearance, but also physiological capabilities, creating a population uniquely adapted to survive in one of the most hostile environments known to human science. The most immediately recognizable effect of volcanic radiation exposure appears in the distinctive coal-black skin pigmentation that characterizes all native Nocturnians. This coloration results from increased production of specialized melanin variants that provide protection against the intense radiation fields surrounding active volcanic systems. The pigmentation deepens with continued exposure, so that individuals who work closest to the volcanic cores develop skin so dark it appears to absorb light rather than reflect it. This protective adaptation allows Nocturnians to survive radiation levels that would prove lethal to unprotected humans from other worlds within hours of exposure. The radiation effects extend beyond simple pigmentation changes to include modifications in bone density, muscle fiber composition, and metabolic efficiency that enhance survival capabilities in extreme heat environments. Nocturnian skeletal structures show increased calcium density and modified crystalline arrangements that provide superior resistance to thermal stress and mechanical shock. Their muscle tissues contain higher concentrations of specialized proteins that maintain function at temperatures that would denature ordinary human muscle fibers, allowing them to work effectively in environments where the ambient temperature exceeds normal human tolerances by significant margins. These physiological adaptations prove particularly beneficial during the Astartes transformation process, as the enhanced baseline capabilities of Nocturnian recruits provide superior compatibility with the genetic modifications and organ implantations required to create space marines. The radiation-adapted metabolism processes the complex biochemical changes more efficiently, while the enhanced bone and muscle structures provide better foundations for the additional organs and modified systems that define Astartes' physiology. This compatibility factor contributes to higher success rates among Nocturnian aspirants compared to recruits from more benign planetary environments. The salamanders themselves display these distinctive physical characteristics in even more pronounced form, as their enhanced Astartes physiology amplifies the radiation adaptation effects inherited from their Nocturnian origins. Their skin achieves a depth of black coloration that seems to absorb light completely, while their eyes often develop the distinctive red glow that results from modified retinal structures adapted to function in high radiation environments. These physical traits, combined with their larger size and enhanced musculature, create an appearance that immediately identifies them as sons of Nocturne, regardless of their current location or mission assignment. The cultural exchange between the Salamanders and Nocturnian society flows in both directions, with the chapter's values and practices influencing civilian communities, while traditional customs continue to shape chapter traditions and priorities. Salamander battle brothers regularly return to their home communities during periods of leave or recovery, bringing with them perspectives and experiences gained during campaigns across the galaxy. These interactions help maintain the chapter's connection to baseline humanity, while providing Nocturnian communities with access to knowledge and resources that improve their survival capabilities and quality of life. The chapter's emphasis on craftsmanship and technical excellence has elevated the overall skill level of Nocturnian artisans and manufacturers, as techniques and materials developed for Astartes equipment find applications in civilian production. The workshops of the sanctuary cities now produce goods that are sought after throughout the sector, from precision instruments to decorative artwork that reflects the unique aesthetic sensibilities developed in the volcanic environment. This economic activity provides the planetary population with trade goods that can be exchanged for off-world resources and technologies that would otherwise be unavailable to an isolated death world. The protective philosophy that defines salamander culture has also influenced Nocturnian social structures, reinforcing traditional values of community solidarity and mutual support while adding new dimensions of service and sacrifice. The concept of using individual strength and capability to protect those who cannot protect themselves has become deeply embedded in Nocturnian culture, creating a society where personal achievement is measured not only by individual success, but also by contributions to collective welfare and security. The mastery of artificer weaponry among the salamanders represents far more than simple technical proficiency. It embodies the fundamental philosophy that distinguishes them from their brother chapters and defines their approach to warfare itself. Every battle brother learns the sacred arts of metallurgy, weaponsmithing, and equipment modification as part of his basic training, creating a legion where the line between warrior and craftsman dissolves entirely. This tradition stems directly from Vulkan's own legendary skills at the Forge, where he created weapons and tools that surpassed anything produced by the greatest artisans of the Imperium. The Primarch's example established the expectation that his sons would not merely wield their weapons, but understand them completely, maintaining and improving their equipment through personal skill rather than relying on external support. The chapter's workshops on Prometheus contain forges that burn with temperatures exceeding those found in most stellar cores, their furnaces powered by carefully controlled fusion reactions that allow the working of materials that would vaporize under normal conditions. These facilities produce weapons that combine the most advanced Imperial technology with innovations developed through millennia of salamander experimentation. Each piece represents hours of painstaking labor by master craftsmen who view their work as both practical necessity and artistic expression. The resulting weapons display the distinctive salamander aesthetic, functional designs, enhanced with decorative elements that reflect the volcanic environment of their homeworld, while serving tactical purposes that improve combat effectiveness. The preference for flame-based weapons throughout the chapter reflects both practical considerations and deep cultural symbolism rooted in Nocturnian traditions. Fire represents purification and renewal in the volcanic world's belief system, the force that transforms raw materials into refined products while destroying corruption and weakness. This philosophical foundation translates into tactical doctrine that emphasizes the psychological impact of flame weapons alongside their obvious destructive capabilities. Enemy forces facing salamander assault squads equipped with flamers and meltaguns often break and flee before suffering significant casualties, their morale shattered by weapons that evoke primal fears of burning death. The chapter's flamers incorporate design modifications that extend their range and increase their fuel efficiency beyond standard Imperial patterns, allowing sustained operations in environments where ammunition resupply proves difficult or impossible. The fuel mixture itself represents a closely guarded chapter secret, combining standard promethium with exotic additives harvested from Nocturne's volcanic systems. This enhanced fuel burns hotter and longer than conventional alternatives, while producing distinctive green-tinged flames that have become a signature of salamander operations across the galaxy. The psychological effect of these unusual flames proves particularly effective against Xeno species that lack human cultural associations with fire, as the unnatural coloration suggests supernatural or technological capabilities beyond normal Imperial equipment. Meltaguns receive even more extensive modification within salamander armories, their fusion chambers enhanced with materials and techniques developed through the chapter's unique understanding of extreme temperature metallurgy. Standard Imperial meltaguns suffer from relatively short range and limited ammunition capacity, restricting their tactical applications to close-range anti-armor work and breaching operations. Salamander artificers have addressed these limitations through innovations in magnetic field manipulation and thermal focusing systems that allow their meltaguns to engage targets at significantly greater distances while maintaining the devastating armor penetration capabilities that make these weapons so feared. The heavy flamers employed by Salamander Devastator squads represent the pinnacle of flame weapon technology, capable of projecting streams of burning fuel across battlefield distances that would challenge conventional projectile weapons. These massive weapons require specialized training to operate effectively, as their increased range and fuel capacity create tactical opportunities that standard Imperial doctrine does not address. Salamander heavy flamer operators learn to use their weapons for area denial and crowd control, as well as direct assault, creating barriers of flame that channel enemy movement while providing covering fire for advancing infantry units. The legendary artifacts of Vulkan occupy a unique position within the chapter's traditions, representing not merely powerful weapons, but tangible connections to their missing Primarch and symbols of the principles he established. These 9 artifacts were created by Vulkan himself during the Great Crusade, each one designed to serve specific tactical purposes, while embodying different aspects of his philosophy and vision for his legion. The artifacts demonstrate capabilities that exceed even the most advanced Imperial technology, incorporating materials and techniques that remain beyond the understanding of contemporary artificers despite millennia of study and analysis. The Spear of Vulkan stands as perhaps the most famous of these legendary weapons, its adamantine shaft inscribed with high Gothic prayers and Nocturnian protective runes that glow with internal heat when the weapon is activated. The spear's point contains a miniaturized fusion reactor that can penetrate any known armor material while cauterizing wounds to prevent regeneration in creatures capable of rapid healing. The weapon's length adjusts automatically to match the wielder's preferred fighting style, extending to serve as a two-handed polearm or contracting for single-handed use in close-quarters combat. The spear's most remarkable feature lies in its ability to return to the wielder's hand when thrown, guided by gravitational manipulation systems that function regardless of intervening obstacles or distances. The Gauntlet of the Forge represents Vulkan's mastery of both creation and destruction, its articulated fingers capable of shaping metal through direct manipulation while delivering crushing blows that can shatter ceramite armor plating. The gauntlet incorporates micro-forges within its palm and fingertips, allowing the wearer to perform field repairs on equipment or create simple tools from available materials. Combat applications include the ability to superheat the gauntlet's surface to temperatures that can melt through bulkhead doors or enemy armor, while defensive capabilities provide protection against energy weapons and environmental hazards that would overwhelm normal power armor systems. The Obsidian Chariot serves as both transportation and mobile weapons platform, its anti-gravity propulsion system allowing it to traverse any terrain while carrying heavy weapons that would normally require static mounting. The chariot's obsidian construction material, harvested from Nocturne's volcanic flows, provides natural resistance to energy weapons, while its built-in repair systems can restore damage sustained during combat operations. The vehicle's most distinctive feature involves its ability to phase partially out of normal space-time, allowing it to pass through solid obstacles while remaining vulnerable to physical attacks from opponents in the same dimensional phase. The Forgefather's seal functions as both a badge of office and a powerful defensive artifact, its circular design incorporating force field generators that can protect entire squads from incoming fire, while projecting offensive energy bursts capable of disrupting enemy electronics and stunning organic targets. The seal's activation requires specific genetic markers that ensure only authorized Salamander personnel can access its capabilities, while its internal power source draws energy from the wielder's own life force to prevent unlimited use that might prove tactically destabilizing. The Engine of Woes represents Vulkan's understanding of siege warfare and fortification assault, its massive bulk requiring specialized transport while delivering firepower equivalent to orbital bombardment systems. The weapon fires self-guided projectiles that can adjust their trajectory mid-flight to engage moving targets or penetrate defensive positions through indirect fire patterns. Each projectile contains sophisticated targeting systems that allow it to distinguish between enemy combatants and civilian populations, reducing collateral damage during urban warfare scenarios where precision becomes essential for maintaining Imperial support among local populations. The unique wargear employed by the Salamanders reflects their cultural values and tactical preferences while providing practical advantages that enhance their combat effectiveness in the specialized environments where they typically operate. Drake scale cloaks represent one of the most distinctive pieces of Salamander equipment, their construction utilizing scales harvested from the great fire drakes that inhabit Nocturne's deepest lava tubes. These creatures grow to enormous size in the planet's volcanic environment, their scales developing properties that provide exceptional resistance to heat and energy weapons, while maintaining flexibility sufficient for use in clothing and armor applications. The process of harvesting drake scales requires expeditions into Nocturne's most dangerous regions, where temperatures exceed those found on most stellar surfaces and toxic gases create atmospheric conditions that would prove lethal even to power-armored space marines. Only the most experienced Salamander veterans undertake these hunts, viewing them as tests of skill and endurance that demonstrate worthiness to wear the resulting cloaks. The scales must be removed from living drakes through careful surgical procedures that avoid damaging the creatures, as Nocturnian tradition holds that killing the great fire drakes brings misfortune to entire communities. Each drake scale cloak represents months of careful preparation and crafting, as the scales must be treated with alchemical solutions that preserve their protective properties while allowing them to be sewn together into functional garments. The resulting cloaks provide protection equivalent to additional armor plating, while weighing significantly less than conventional alternatives, allowing the wearer to maintain full mobility while gaining enhanced survivability against energy weapons and environmental hazards. The cloaks also serve ceremonial functions, with their distinctive appearance immediately identifying the wearer as a Salamander veteran who has proven himself worthy of this honor. Master-crafted thunderhammers occupy positions of particular reverence within Salamander armories, their construction representing the pinnacle of the chapter's weaponsmithing capabilities. These weapons combine the devastating impact potential of standard thunder hammers with refinements that improve their balance, durability, and energy efficiency beyond anything produced by standard Imperial manufacturing processes. Each hammer requires years of work by master artificers, who must forge the weapon's head from materials capable of withstanding the tremendous forces generated during combat, while maintaining the precise weight distribution necessary for effective wielding. The hammers incorporate power field generators that create disruptor effects around the weapon's striking surface, allowing them to penetrate force fields and energy barriers that would deflect conventional weapons. The field generators draw power from miniaturized fusion cells embedded within the hammer's handle, providing sufficient energy for extended combat operations without requiring external power sources or frequent recharging. The weapon's most distinctive feature involves their ability to channel the wielder's own psychic energy into devastating attacks that can shatter even the most heavily armored targets through combinations of physical impact and metaphysical disruption. Specialized flame weapons developed by Salamander artificers extend far beyond simple modifications of standard Imperial patterns, incorporating innovations that create entirely new categories of incendiary armament. The pyroclast cannon represents one of the most ambitious of these developments, its massive bulk requiring mounting on vehicle chassis or deployment as static defensive weapons. The cannon fires concentrated streams of superheated plasma that maintain coherence across battlefield distances, creating effects similar to miniaturized solar flares that can devastate entire enemy formations while leaving surrounding terrain relatively undamaged. The Infernus pistol serves as the personal sidearm of choice for many Salamander officers, its compact design concealing capabilities that rival those of full-sized melta guns. The weapon's miniaturized fusion chamber requires exotic materials and precision manufacturing techniques that push the limits of Imperial technology, resulting in production costs that exceed those of most vehicle-mounted weapon systems. Despite these limitations, the pistol's ability to penetrate heavy armor at close range makes it invaluable for boarding actions and urban warfare scenarios where officers must engage heavily protected enemies in confined spaces. The role of tech marines within the Salamanders extends far beyond the standard maintenance and repair duties associated with this specialization in other chapters, encompassing responsibilities that make them integral to the chapter's identity and operational capabilities. Salamander Tech Marines serve as keepers of ancient knowledge and guardians of crafting traditions that date back to Vulkan himself, their training incorporating not only the standard curriculum provided by the Adeptus Mechanicus, but also chapter-specific techniques and philosophies that have been passed down through generations of master artificers. The Forge Fathers represent the pinnacle of technical achievement within the chapter, their status earned through decades of service and demonstrated mastery of both theoretical knowledge and practical application. These individuals oversee the chapter's most important manufacturing projects, while serving as teachers and mentors for younger battle brothers seeking to develop their own crafting skills. The Forge Fathers maintain the ancient forges on Prometheus, while developing new techniques and materials that advance the chapter's technological capabilities beyond the standards maintained by other Imperial forces. The technological superiority maintained by the Salamanders results from their unique approach to equipment development and maintenance, which emphasizes individual understanding and innovation rather than rigid adherence to established patterns. This philosophy allows them to adapt their equipment to meet specific mission requirements, while maintaining the reliability and effectiveness that Imperial forces require for successful operations. Their reputation for technical excellence has made them valuable allies for other Imperial organizations seeking solutions to complex engineering challenges or access to specialized equipment that cannot be obtained through normal supply channels. The Istvan system burned with the fires of rebellion when Warmaster Horus revealed his true allegiance to the ruinous powers, transforming what should have been a routine compliance action into the opening gambit of the galaxy's greatest civil war. The virus bombing of Istvan III had already demonstrated the depths of treachery to which the War Master would sink, but the loyal Primarchs who received orders to bring the traitor to justice could not have imagined the elaborate trap that awaited them on the fifth world of that cursed system. Vulkan led his Salamanders into what Imperial records would later chronicle as the Drop Site Massacre, a betrayal so complete and devastating that it nearly extinguished 3 entire legions in a single afternoon of coordinated slaughter. The strategic situation on Istvan V appeared straightforward to the loyal forces assembling for the assault. Intelligence reports indicated that Horus had fortified positions across the planet's primary continent, using the intervening months since Istvan III to construct defensive works that would require sustained assault to overcome. The plan called for a coordinated drop pod assault by 7 legions, with the Iron Hands, Raven Guard, and Salamanders forming the first wave, while the Iron Warriors, Night Lords, Alpha Legion, and Word Bearers would follow as reinforcements once the initial beachhead was established. The deployment represented one of the largest concentrations of Astartes' forces since the early days of the Great Crusade, a show of strength intended to demonstrate the futility of opposing the Emperor's will. Vulkan's concerns about the operational plan centered on the extended supply lines and limited extraction options, rather than any suspicion of his brother Primarch's loyalty. The Salamanders had always preferred methodical approaches to siege warfare, building secure supply bases and establishing multiple fallback positions before committing to major assaults. The Istvan V plan called for rapid deployment with minimal logistical support, relying on speed and overwhelming force to achieve victory before the traitor forces could organize effective resistance. The Primarch's objections were noted, but overruled by the majority consensus among the loyal commanders, who argued that delay would only allow Horus additional time to strengthen his positions. The first wave drop pods screamed through Istvan V's atmosphere in perfect formation, their heat shields glowing white-hot as they pierced the planet's defensive fire and atmospheric interference. Salamander pods touched down in their designated zones with characteristic precision, their occupants deploying immediately into combat formations that had been rehearsed countless times during the Great Crusade. The initial resistance proved lighter than expected, with traitor forces offering token opposition before falling back toward their prepared positions in apparent disorder. This tactical withdrawal should have triggered warning signals among experienced commanders, but the momentum of the assault and the apparent success of the opening phase encouraged continued advance according to the predetermined plan. Vulkan personally led the central assault column, his massive frame easily recognizable even at distance as he wielded Dawnbringer against the traitor positions. The Primarch's presence inspired his sons to extraordinary feats of valor, with entire companies advancing through withering fire to maintain contact with their Gene Father. The Salamanders' preferred tactics of methodical advance and overwhelming firepower proved effective against the scattered resistance they encountered, but the ease of their progress should have raised suspicions among veterans who had fought alongside Horus during previous campaigns. The War Master's tactical genius had never manifested in half-hearted defensive measures or poorly coordinated withdrawals. The Iron Hands and Raven Guard faced similar light resistance in their assigned sectors, with Ferrus Manus driving his forces forward with characteristic aggression, while Korax led his warriors in lightning strikes against isolated strongpoints. The 3 loyal legions maintained communication throughout the initial phase, coordinating their advances to prevent the traitor forces from concentrating against any single point. The tactical situation appeared to be developing according to plan, with the first wave establishing secure landing zones for the reinforcing legions while maintaining pressure on the retreating enemy forces. The second wave drop pods began their descent as the first wave consolidated their initial gains, bringing the Iron Warriors, Night Lords, Alpha Legion, and Word Bearers into the battle zone according to the predetermined schedule. These reinforcing legions deployed in positions that would allow them to exploit the gaps created by the first wave's advance, their landing zones carefully selected to maximize tactical flexibility, while maintaining mutual support capabilities. The sight of additional loyal forces arriving filled the Salamanders with confidence that victory was within reach, their Gene Father's concerns about extended supply lines seemingly proven unfounded by the rapid progress of the assault. The moment of betrayal arrived without warning or ceremony, marked only by the sudden redirection of weapons that had been pointed toward the traitor positions. The Iron Warriors, Night Lords, Alpha Legion, and Word-Bearers opened fire on their supposed allies with coordinated precision that spoke of extensive planning and preparation. The Salamanders found themselves caught in a crossfire between the entrenched traitor positions they had been assaulting and the reinforcing legions that were supposed to support their advance. The tactical situation transformed from apparent victory to desperate survival in the space of heartbeats, as the loyal forces realized the true scope of the trap that had been prepared for them. Vulkan's immediate response demonstrated the tactical acumen that had made him one of the Emperor's most trusted sons, as he recognized the changed situation and began implementing emergency protocols that might salvage something from the disaster. The Primarch's battlefield communications crackled with orders redirecting Salamander units away from the most exposed positions while organizing defensive formations that could withstand attack from multiple directions. His personal example of calm leadership under impossible circumstances prevented the immediate collapse that might have resulted from panic or confusion among the Legion's rank and file. The Salamanders' training in defensive warfare proved invaluable during the opening minutes of the massacre, as their instinctive responses to ambush situations allowed them to establish hasty fighting positions while maintaining unit cohesion under fire. Companies that had been advancing in assault formation quickly reorganized into defensive circles, their heavy weapons creating overlapping fields of fire that forced the traitor forces to pay a heavy price for every meter of ground gained. The Legion's emphasis on equipment maintenance and modification showed its worth as individual battle brothers adapted their weapons for the changed tactical situation, converting flamers and meltaguns from assault weapons into area denial tools that created barriers against advancing enemies. The coordination between the traitor legions revealed the extensive planning that had preceded the massacre, with each force playing predetermined roles in the destruction of their former allies. The Iron Warriors provided heavy weapons support and siege expertise, their artillery creating kill zones that channeled the loyal forces into prepared ambush sites. The Night Lords specialized in psychological warfare and terror tactics, their sudden appearance from unexpected directions sowing confusion and fear among units already struggling to comprehend the scope of the betrayal. The Alpha Legion employed their mastery of infiltration and misdirection to disrupt communications and spread false orders that further degraded the loyal forces' ability to coordinate their defense. The Word-Bearers brought a different kind of horror to the battlefield, their chanted invocations calling forth manifestations of chaos that violated the natural laws governing reality itself. Demons materialized among the loyal forces, their impossible forms and supernatural abilities creating panic among warriors who had never encountered enemies that could not be defeated through conventional weapons and tactics. The Salamander's flame weapons proved somewhat effective against these otherworldly creatures, but the psychological impact of facing literal manifestations of evil shook even veteran battle brothers who had witnessed the worst horrors the galaxy could produce. Ferrus Manus fell during the early stages of the massacre, his death sending shockwaves through the loyal forces that went far beyond the tactical implications of losing a Primarch's leadership. The Iron Hands had followed their Gene Father's aggressive advance into what proved to be a carefully prepared killing ground, where concentrated fire from multiple traitor legions overwhelmed even Primarch-level resilience. The sight of Ferrus Manus's severed head being displayed by traitor champions broke the morale of many Iron Hands units, turning organized withdrawal into panicked flight that left gaps in the defensive lines. Corax and his Raven Guard faced their own desperate situation as the Night Lords and Alpha Legion combined their stealth capabilities to launch coordinated strikes against isolated units. The Raven Guard's own expertise in covert operations provided some protection against these tactics, but the sheer scale of the betrayal meant that traditional counter-infiltration measures proved inadequate against enemies who possessed intimate knowledge of loyal Legion capabilities and standard operating procedures. The Primarch of the 19th Legion found himself fighting a running battle across the drop site, attempting to maintain contact with scattered companies while avoiding the concentrated efforts to eliminate him. Vulkan's survival during the massacre stemmed from a combination of his perpetual nature, tactical skill, and the desperate courage of his sons who sacrificed themselves to protect their Primarch. The Salamanders formed defensive rings around their Gene Father, accepting horrific casualties to maintain a corridor of escape that might allow him to reach the extraction zones. These sacrificial stands became legendary within the Legion's traditions, with entire companies fighting to the last battle brother to buy precious minutes for their Primarch's withdrawal. The volcanic fury that Vulkan displayed during these final moments of the massacre earned him the terrified respect of even the traitor forces, as his wrath burned through their ranks like literal fire. The collapse of the loyal forces' position became inevitable as ammunition ran low and casualties mounted beyond sustainable levels. The Salamanders had expended their heavy weapons ammunition in the initial defensive actions, leaving them with small arms and close combat weapons against enemies who still possessed full logistical support. The traitor forces pressed their advantage ruthlessly, using their superior numbers and coordination to eliminate isolated pockets of resistance while preventing any organized withdrawal to the extraction zones. The final hours of the massacre saw acts of heroism and sacrifice that would be remembered for millennia, as individual salamanders and small units made last stands that allowed their brothers to escape or complete essential missions. Veteran sergeants led forlorn hopes against overwhelming odds, buying time for wounded battle brothers to reach medical evacuation points. Tech Marines destroyed vital equipment rather than allow it to fall into traitor hands, even when doing so meant abandoning their own chances of survival. These individual acts of courage could not change the overall outcome of the battle, but they demonstrated the unbreakable spirit that would sustain the Legion through the dark years ahead. Vulkan's capture occurred during the final stages of the massacre, when exhaustion and accumulated wounds finally overcame even his superhuman endurance. The Primarch had been fighting continuously for hours, his perpetual nature allowing him to continue combat operations despite injuries that would have incapacitated lesser beings. Conrad Kurz and his knight, lords, had been hunting the Salamander Primarch specifically, using their knowledge of his protective instincts to predict his movements and gradually isolate him from his remaining forces. The trap that finally snared Vulkan involved threatened civilians from the planet's population, forcing him to choose between his own safety and the lives of innocents. The torture that Conrad Kurz inflicted upon his captured brother represented more than simple sadism or revenge for past grievances between their legions. The Night Haunter sought to break Vulkan's spirit and prove that his humanitarian principles were weaknesses that made him unfit for the harsh realities of galactic warfare. The torments included not only physical pain, but psychological warfare designed to convince the Salamander Primarch that his protective instincts had led to the deaths of his sons and the near destruction of his legion. Kurz's methods drew upon his intimate knowledge of Vulkan's character and values, targeting the beliefs and relationships that formed the core of his identity. The perpetual nature that had protected Vulkan throughout his life became a curse during his captivity, as death provided no escape from the torments that Kurz devised. Each time the Night Haunter's ministrations proved fatal, the Salamander Primarch's body would regenerate while retaining the memories of his suffering. This cycle of death and resurrection continued for subjective years, while the galaxy burned around them, with Vulkan experiencing torments that would have driven lesser beings to madness or despair. The psychological impact of this experience would influence his actions and decisions for millennia after his eventual escape. The escape itself came through a combination of opportunity and the intervention of loyal forces who had survived the massacre and spent months tracking their Primarch's location. A joint operation by surviving Salamanders, Iron Hands, and Raven Guard managed to locate the facility where Kurz held his prisoner, launching a desperate assault that created enough confusion for Vulkan to break free of his restraints. The Primarch's fury at his treatment and the losses suffered by his legion manifested in a rampage that devastated the Night Lord's positions, but Kurz himself escaped to continue his predations elsewhere in the galaxy. The aftermath of Istvan V left the Salamanders as a broken force, their numbers reduced to a fraction of their pre-massacre strength, and their Primarch traumatized by experiences that challenged his fundamental beliefs about duty and sacrifice. The survivors who managed to escape the drop site found themselves scattered across the galaxy, cut off from their home base and forced to operate as independent units while attempting to rebuild their shattered legion. The process of recovery would take decades, requiring not only the recruitment and training of new battle brothers, but also the reconstruction of the cultural and philosophical foundations that had been damaged by the betrayal. The long rebuilding process tested every aspect of Salamander tradition and identity, as the survivors struggled to maintain their values while adapting to the harsh realities of a galaxy consumed by civil war. The chapter's emphasis on craftsmanship and technical excellence proved invaluable during this period, as scattered units could maintain their equipment and create new weapons from salvaged materials without relying on external support. The protective instincts that had nearly led to their destruction at Istvan V were tempered by hard-won wisdom about the costs of noble intentions in an ignoble age. The survivors maintained their traditions through small rituals and informal gatherings that preserved the essential elements of Salamander culture even when formal ceremonies became impossible. Veterans who had served before the massacre became living repositories of chapter knowledge, passing on tactical doctrines, crafting techniques, and philosophical principles to new recruits who had never seen Nocturne or met Vulkan himself. These transmission processes ensured continuity of identity across the gap created by the near-extinction event, allowing the rebuilt Legion to retain its distinctive character despite the traumatic interruption of its development. The Salamanders maintained strict adherence to the organizational principles outlined in the Codex Astartes, while simultaneously preserving the unique cultural elements that distinguish them from their brother chapters. This careful balance between Imperial standardization and Nocturnian tradition creates a military structure that functions seamlessly within the broader framework of Astartes doctrine, while retaining the distinctive characteristics that make the Salamanders such effective protectors of humanity. The chapter's 10 companies follow the prescribed composition of tactical, assault, devastator, and scout units, but each formation incorporates specialized equipment, modified tactics, and cultural practices that reflect their volcanic heritage and humanitarian philosophy. The first company, composed entirely of veteran warriors clad in Terminator armor, represents the pinnacle of Salamander military prowess and serves as the keeper of the chapter's most sacred traditions. These battle brothers have proven themselves through decades of service, demonstrating not only exceptional combat skills, but also mastery of the crafting arts that form such an integral part of chapter culture. Each member of the first company has forged his own weapons and modified his armor to reflect personal preferences and specialized roles, creating a formation where no two warriors bear identical equipment despite their standardized Terminator suits. The Fire Drakes represent the elite within the elite, a specialized formation drawn from the most experienced members of the first company who have distinguished themselves through exceptional valor and unwavering commitment to the chapter's protective mission. These warriors undergo additional training that focuses on close-quarters combat in extreme environments, preparing them for operations in volcanic caverns, industrial complexes, and starship corridors, where their specialized skills provide decisive advantages. The Fire Drake's Terminator armor incorporates enhanced heat shielding and improved life support systems that allow them to operate in conditions that would challenge even standard Astartes equipment. The selection process for Fire Drake membership extends beyond simple combat prowess to encompass the philosophical and cultural qualities that define the chapter's identity. Candidates must demonstrate exceptional skill in craftsmanship, creating masterwork weapons or armor pieces that showcase both technical expertise and artistic vision. They must also prove their commitment to protecting human life through actions that place civilian welfare above personal safety or tactical convenience. The final requirement involves a pilgrimage to Nocturne's most dangerous volcanic regions, where aspirants must survive alone for extended periods while crafting a piece of equipment using only materials they can gather from the hostile environment. Firedrake combat doctrine emphasizes methodical advance and overwhelming firepower application, with each warrior equipped with weapons specifically chosen for their intended role within the formation. Heavy flamers and multi-meltas form the backbone of their armament, providing the area effect and armor penetration capabilities necessary for their specialized missions. The unit's tactical flexibility allows them to adapt their equipment loadout based on mission requirements, with individual warriors maintaining proficiency in multiple weapon systems that can be exchanged as circumstances demand. The 2nd through 5th companies serve as the chapter's primary battle companies, each maintaining full strength of 100 battle brothers organized into the standard mix of tactical, assault, and devastator squads. These formations bear the responsibility for the majority of the chapter's combat operations, deploying across the galaxy to fulfill the Salamanders' obligations to the Imperium while maintaining their commitment to protecting human populations wherever they encounter them. The battle companies incorporate the chapter's tactical preferences for close-quarters combat and methodical advance, but they retain sufficient flexibility to adapt their methods to the diverse challenges they face during extended campaigns. Each battle company maintains its own forge facilities and technical specialists, allowing them to operate independently for extended periods without requiring support from the chapter's main workshops on Prometheus. This self-sufficiency reflects the Salamander philosophy of preparation and self-reliance, ensuring that individual companies can maintain combat effectiveness even when cut off from their home base by warp storms, enemy action, or the vast distances involved in galactic warfare. The company forges produce not only replacement equipment and ammunition, but also specialized tools and weapons designed for specific mission requirements that cannot be met by standard Imperial patterns. The 6th through 9th companies follow the reserve company structure outlined in the Codex Astartes, but they incorporate training programs and cultural practices that prepare their members for eventual integration into the battle companies. The reserve companies serve as repositories of specialized knowledge and skills, with individual squads developing expertise in particular aspects of warfare that complement the chapter's overall tactical doctrine. These formations provide reinforcement for deployed battle companies while maintaining the chapter's recruiting and training programs that ensure a steady supply of qualified battle brothers. The 10th Company Scout Company plays a crucial role in maintaining the chapter's connection to Nocturne's population while identifying and training the next generation of Salamanders. Scout sergeants drawn from the chapter's veteran ranks serve as mentors and teachers, passing on not only military skills, but also the cultural values and crafting techniques that define chapter identity. The Scout training program incorporates extended periods on Nocturne's surface, where aspirants learn to survive in the planet's hostile environment while developing the technical skills they will need as full battle brothers. The chapter's command structure reflects both Codex compliance and Nocturnian tribal traditions, creating a hierarchy that balances formal military authority with the informal relationships that bind the Salamanders together as a brotherhood. Company captains hold absolute authority within their formations during combat operations, but they also serve as father figures and mentors who take personal responsibility for the welfare and development of their subordinates. This dual role requires exceptional leadership skills that go beyond simple tactical competence to encompass the emotional intelligence and cultural sensitivity necessary to maintain unit morale and cohesion. The selection of company captains involves extensive evaluation by the chapter's senior leadership, including assessment of the candidate's mastery of Salamander cultural traditions and philosophy alongside their military qualifications. Prospective captains must demonstrate their ability to inspire loyalty and sacrifice among their subordinates, while maintaining the humanitarian principles that distinguish the chapter from more ruthless Astartes formations. The evaluation process includes practical tests where candidates must make difficult decisions that balance tactical objectives against civilian welfare, proving their commitment to the chapter's protective mission. Company captains maintain regular communication with each other and with the chapter master, sharing intelligence and coordinating operations that span multiple sectors of Imperial space. This communication network allows the Salamanders to respond quickly to emerging threats while ensuring that their scattered forces remain unified in purpose and doctrine. The captains also serve as keepers of chapter traditions, organizing ceremonies and rituals that maintain cultural continuity despite the geographical separation that characterizes modern Astartes operations. The chapter master holds ultimate authority over all Salamander forces and serves as the primary keeper of Vulkan's legacy and teachings. This position requires not only exceptional military leadership, but also deep understanding of the philosophical principles that guide chapter actions and the cultural traditions that maintain their identity. The chapter master must balance the competing demands of Imperial service and chapter values, making strategic decisions that advance the Imperium's interests while preserving the humanitarian principles that Vulkan established as fundamental to Salamander identity. The selection of a new chapter master involves the entire chapter in a process that combines democratic consultation with hierarchical authority, reflecting the Nocturnian tribal traditions that influence Salamander culture. Company captains and senior veterans provide input regarding the qualifications and suitability of potential candidates, while the final decision rests with the chapter's senior leadership council. The chosen individual must demonstrate mastery of all aspects of chapter doctrine and culture, from tactical expertise to crafting skills to philosophical understanding of their protective mission. The Salamander's tactical preferences center on close-quarters combat and methodical advance, doctrines that reflect both their cultural values and the practical lessons learned through millennia of warfare in diverse environments. This approach emphasizes thorough preparation, overwhelming firepower application, and careful attention to civilian protection that distinguishes their operations from the more aggressive tactics favored by some other chapters. The doctrine proves particularly effective in urban warfare, siege operations, and defensive actions, where the Salamander's patience and technical expertise provide decisive advantages over enemies who rely on speed and surprise. Close-quarters combat specialization stems from the chapter's preference for flame weapons and their cultural emphasis on personal craftsmanship that creates strong bonds between warriors and their equipment. Salamander battle brothers train extensively in boarding actions, tunnel fighting, and urban combat scenarios, where their specialized weapons and modified armor provide maximum advantage. The psychological impact of flame weapons in confined spaces often proves as valuable as their direct destructive effects, as enemy forces frequently break and flee rather than face the terror of burning death in enclosed environments. The methodical advance doctrine reflects Nocturnian cultural values of patience and endurance, translated into military tactics that prioritize sustainable progress over rapid gains that cannot be maintained. Salamander forces establish secure supply lines and fallback positions before committing to major offensive operations, ensuring that they can maintain combat effectiveness even when facing unexpected resistance or enemy counterattacks. This careful approach sometimes frustrates Imperial commanders who prefer faster results, but the Salamander's consistent success in achieving their objectives with minimal casualties has earned them respect throughout the Imperial military hierarchy. Flame weapon employment extends far beyond simple incendiary effects to encompass area denial, psychological warfare, and specialized anti-armor applications that maximize the tactical value of these distinctive weapons. Salamander tactical doctrine includes detailed procedures for coordinating flame attacks with conventional weapons, creating combined arms effects that overwhelm enemy defenses through multiple simultaneous threats. The chapter's artificers have developed specialized ammunition types and weapon modifications that enhance the effectiveness of flame weapons in specific tactical situations, from tunnel clearing to vehicle destruction to crowd control. The integration of heavy weapons into Salamander tactical doctrine emphasizes flexibility and adaptability, with Devastator squads trained to rapidly reconfigure their equipment based on changing battlefield conditions. Multi-meltas serve as the primary anti-armor weapon, their ability to penetrate the heaviest protection, making them invaluable against enemy vehicles and fortifications. Heavy bolters provide sustained fire support for advancing infantry, while missile launchers offer versatility through their ability to engage both armored and personnel targets with appropriate ammunition selection. Specialized units within the chapter structure provide capabilities that complement the standard company organization while addressing specific tactical requirements that arise during complex operations. Chaplains serve not only as spiritual guides, but also as keepers of chapter traditions and philosophy, ensuring that the humanitarian principles established by Vulkan continue to influence tactical decisions and strategic planning. These warrior priests undergo extensive training in both martial arts and cultural preservation, making them uniquely qualified to maintain unit morale while preserving the distinctive identity that sets the Salamanders apart from other chapters. Librarians within the Salamanders focus their psychic abilities on protective applications and battlefield support rather than the more aggressive manifestations favored by some other chapters. Their training emphasizes defensive techniques that can shield friendly forces from enemy psychers while providing tactical intelligence through divination and scrying abilities. The chapter's librarians also serve as historians and record keepers, using their enhanced memory and psychic abilities to preserve detailed accounts of battles, cultural practices, and technical innovations that might otherwise be lost over the centuries. Apothecaries hold positions of particular respect within Salamander culture, as their life-saving skills align perfectly with the chapter's protective philosophy and humanitarian mission. These medical specialists receive training that goes beyond standard Astartes requirements to include civilian medical procedures and emergency response techniques that prove valuable during disaster relief operations. The chapter's apothecaries also serve as genetic counselors and physical fitness advisors, helping to maintain the health and combat effectiveness of their battle brothers through preventive care and performance optimization. Tech Marines represent the living embodiment of the chapter's crafting traditions. Their dual training with the Adeptus Mechanicus and chapter artificers creating unique perspectives on technology and engineering that benefit the entire formation. These warrior engineers maintain not only the chapter's vehicles and equipment, but also the specialized forges and manufacturing facilities that enable their self-sufficient operations. Salamander Tech Marines often develop innovations and improvements that enhance standard Imperial technology, sharing their discoveries with other Imperial forces while maintaining the chapter's technological advantages. The chapter's approach to recruitment and training reflects their cultural values while ensuring that new battle brothers possess the skills and mindset necessary for effective service. The process begins with identification of suitable candidates among Nocturne's population, focusing on individuals who demonstrate exceptional courage, technical aptitude, and protective instincts toward their communities. The selection criteria emphasize character and cultural compatibility, alongside physical and mental capabilities, ensuring that successful candidates will integrate smoothly into chapter traditions and philosophy. Training programs incorporate extensive instruction in crafting skills alongside standard military education, with aspirants learning to forge their own weapons and modify their equipment according to personal preferences and tactical requirements. This technical training serves multiple purposes, from ensuring self-sufficiency during extended operations to maintaining the cultural traditions that define chapter identity. The emphasis on individual craftsmanship also creates strong psychological bonds between warriors and their equipment, enhancing combat effectiveness through familiarity and personal investment in weapon performance. The Badab War erupted in the early 41st millennium as one of the most significant conflicts to engulf the Imperium since the Horus Heresy, pitting loyalist Space Marine chapters against the secessionist forces led by Luft Huron and his astral claws. The Salamanders found themselves drawn into this bitter civil war not through strategic necessity, but through their unwavering commitment to protecting Imperial citizens caught in the crossfire of Astartes warfare. The conflict began as a dispute over tithe obligations and administrative autonomy in the Maelstrom Zone, but it quickly escalated into open rebellion when Huron declared the independence of the Badab sector and began fortifying his positions against inevitable Imperial retaliation. The Salamanders' involvement in the Badab War reflected their characteristic approach to complex political situations, where civilian populations faced suffering regardless of the conflict's ultimate resolution. While other chapters focused on the military and political implications of Huron's rebellion, the Salamanders recognized that the prolonged warfare would devastate the human populations of dozens of worlds caught between the opposing forces. Their initial deployment aimed not at rapid conquest, but at establishing protected zones where non-combatants could find refuge, while the larger strategic situation developed. Captain Pelas Mirzan of the Third Company led the initial Salamander response to the crisis, deploying his forces to the agri-world of Grief, where refugee populations from contested systems had gathered in overcrowded camps that lacked adequate supplies or medical facilities. The Salamanders established field hospitals and distribution centers, while their Techmarines worked to restore damaged infrastructure that could support the growing refugee population. This humanitarian mission put them at odds with other Imperial forces who viewed such activities as distractions from the primary military objectives, but Mirzan maintained his commitment to protecting civilian lives despite pressure from Sector Command. The Siege of Badab Primaris represented the culmination of the Salamanders' involvement in the conflict, as they joined the final assault against Huron's Fortress Palace after years of preliminary operations throughout the sector. The Salamanders' expertise in siege warfare and close-quarters combat made them valuable contributors to the complex urban fighting that characterized the battle for the capital world. Their flame weapons proved particularly effective in clearing the underground tunnel networks that Huron's forces used to move reinforcements and supplies throughout the city, while their methodical approach to building-by-building clearing operations minimized civilian casualties in the densely populated urban areas. The Salamanders faced their most challenging moment during the assault on the Palace of Thorns, where Huron had concentrated his most fanatical followers and deadliest defensive systems. The palace's corridors were filled with automated defense turrets, explosive traps, and concealed firing positions that turned every advance into a costly endeavor. The Salamanders' Terminator armored veterans led the assault through these deadly passages, their enhanced protection allowing them to survive the concentrated firepower, while their own weapons systematically dismantled the defensive installations. The final confrontation with Huron himself took place in the palace's central throne room, where the Tyrant of Badab had made his last stand surrounded by his remaining bodyguards and the twisted machinery that had sustained his rebellion. The Salamanders fought alongside battle brothers from multiple chapters in the climactic battle, their disciplined advance and coordinated fire support helping to overwhelm the desperate defenders. Huron's escape through a concealed teleportarium denied the Imperial forces complete victory, but the fall of Badab Primaris effectively ended organized resistance throughout the sector. The aftermath of the Badab War left the Salamanders with mixed feelings about their role in the conflict, as their humanitarian efforts had succeeded in saving thousands of civilian lives, while the broader strategic objectives remained only partially achieved. The chapter's actions during the war enhanced their reputation among Imperial Guard regiments and civilian administrators who had witnessed their commitment to protecting non-combatants, but some Astartes commanders criticized their priorities as misplaced during a military campaign. The lessons learned during the Badab War would influence Salamander doctrine for centuries afterward, reinforcing their belief that protecting human life must remain a primary consideration even during the most pressing military operations. The The Third War for Armageddon erupted when Gazkul Mag Uruk Thraka returned to the Hive world with the largest orc invasion force seen since the Beast's rampage in the 32nd millennium. The Salamanders deployed 3 full companies to support the planetary defense, recognizing that Armageddon's massive industrial capacity and civilian population made it a strategic target whose loss would cripple Imperial capabilities throughout the sector. The scale of the orc invasion dwarfed previous conflicts on the world, with millions of greenskins making planetfall across multiple continents, while Gazkul's strategic genius coordinated their advance toward the primary Hive cities. Captain Dacker of the Third Company established Salamander headquarters in Hive Vulcanus, where the chapter's expertise in industrial warfare and urban combat could provide maximum benefit to the overall defense effort. The Hive's lower levels contained massive manufacturing complexes that produced weapons and equipment for Imperial forces throughout the sector, making their protection essential for maintaining the war effort. The Salamanders worked closely with the Armageddon Steel Legion and local PDF forces to establish defensive positions throughout the industrial zones, using their technical expertise to turn factory equipment into improvised weapons and fortifications. The battle for the Diabolus industrial complex became one of the defining engagements of the Salamanders' participation in the war, as orc forces launched repeated assaults against the weapons manufacturing facilities that supplied ammunition for the planetary defense. The complex's maze of assembly lines, storage warehouses, and administrative buildings created a 3-dimensional battlefield where the Salamanders' close-quarters combat training provided decisive advantages. Their flame weapons proved devastatingly effective against orc assault troops in the confined spaces of the factory floors, while their methodical clearing techniques prevented the greenskins from establishing permanent footholds within the facility. Brother Sergeant Kadai led a particularly heroic defense of Production Line Gamma 7, where his tactical squad held off waves of orc attackers for 6 days, while factory workers evacuated critical manufacturing equipment to more secure locations. The Salamanders established interlocking fields of fire throughout the production facility, using heavy machinery as cover, while their weapons created killing zones that forced the orcs to pay heavily for every meter of advance. Kadai's squad suffered severe casualties during the prolonged engagement, but their sacrifice allowed the evacuation of irreplaceable manufacturing templates and skilled technicians whose expertise would prove vital for maintaining weapons production throughout the war. The Salamanders' involvement in the defense of Hive Tempestora demonstrated their ability to adapt their tactical doctrine to the unique challenges of Hive warfare, where vertical movement and 3-dimensional thinking became as important as traditional ground combat skills. The Hive's towering spires and interconnected bridges created a battlefield that extended from the foundational levels deep underground to the aristocratic quarters hundreds of meters above the surface. Orc forces attempted to infiltrate the Hive through damaged sections of the outer walls, using their natural climbing abilities and crude grappling equipment to bypass the primary defensive positions. Captain Dacker personally led the counter-infiltration efforts, deploying his battle brothers in small teams throughout the Hive's middle levels, where they could respond quickly to orc breakthrough attempts. The Salamanders' modified jump packs allowed them to traverse the vertical battlefield with unprecedented mobility, while their flame weapons created effective barriers that prevented orc forces from consolidating their gains in captured sections. The urban fighting required constant adaptation as the battle shifted between different levels and districts, with individual squads operating independently while maintaining communication through the Hive's damaged but functional Vox networks. The climactic battle for the Armageddon Prime spaceport saw the Salamanders fighting alongside elements from multiple chapters as Imperial forces attempted to prevent orc capture of the critical transportation hub. The spaceport's vast landing fields and cargo handling facilities represented strategic objectives that could determine the war's outcome, as their loss would severely limit the Imperium's ability to bring in reinforcements and supplies from off-world sources. Gazkul had concentrated his most elite units for the assault, including his personal bodyguard of mega-armored knobs and several squadrons of captured Imperial vehicles that had been crudely modified for Orc use. The Salamanders deployed their Terminator armored veterans in the spaceport's main terminal building, where the confined spaces and multiple levels created ideal conditions for their specialized equipment and tactics. The Fire Drakes led the defense of the primary control center, their storm shields and thunder hammers proving devastatingly effective against the Orc assault troops who attempted to storm the facility. The battle raged for hours as waves of greenskins threw themselves against the Astartes' positions, their crude but effective weapons gradually wearing down the defenders' ammunition supplies and physical endurance. Brother Captain Brayarth Ashmantle distinguished himself during the spaceport battle by leading a counterattack that broke the Orc assault just as Imperial defenses reached their breaking point. His modified dreadnought chassis, equipped with specialized flame weapons and enhanced armor plating, carved through the Orc formations like a walking inferno, while his tactical expertise coordinated the efforts of scattered Imperial units. The sight of the ancient warrior advancing through the smoke and flames inspired nearby guard regiments to renewed efforts, turning what had appeared to be inevitable defeat into a hard-fought victory that preserved Imperial control of the vital facility. The Salamanders' performance during the Third War for Armageddon earned them recognition throughout the Imperial military hierarchy, as their combination of tactical flexibility and unwavering determination proved essential for the successful defense of multiple critical objectives. Their expertise in industrial warfare and urban combat complemented the broader Imperial strategy, while their humanitarian efforts helped maintain civilian morale during the darkest phases of the conflict. The relationships forged with Guard regiments and PDF forces during the war created lasting bonds that would prove valuable during future operations throughout the sector. The chapter's subsequent campaigns throughout the 41st millennium demonstrated their continued evolution as a fighting force while maintaining the core principles established by their Primarch. The cleansing of Stratos involved a 3-year campaign against a chaos cult that had infiltrated the planet's government and military forces, requiring the Salamanders to conduct careful investigations while protecting loyal citizens from retribution by corrupted authorities. The campaign showcased their ability to operate in complex political environments where traditional military solutions proved inadequate for addressing the underlying problems. Captain Harath Shen of the Second Company led the Stratos operation with characteristic patience and methodical planning, establishing networks of loyal contacts among the planetary population while gathering intelligence about the cult's organization and capabilities. The Salamanders worked closely with Inquisition forces to identify corrupted officials and military officers, but they insisted on conducting their own verification procedures to prevent innocent citizens from being caught up in the purge. This careful approach extended the campaign's duration, but ultimately resulted in a more complete victory that eliminated the cult threat while preserving the planet's governmental and economic structures. The battle for the Forge World Mezoa tested the Salamanders' ability to operate in the highly technical environment of Adeptus Mechanicus facilities, where their own expertise in manufacturing and engineering proved invaluable for understanding the complex systems that sustain the planet's industrial output. A massive Orc invasion had overwhelmed the planet's Skitarii defenders and threatened to destroy irreplaceable manufacturing capabilities that produced specialized equipment for multiple Space Marine chapters. The Salamanders deployed alongside Iron Hands and Raven Guard forces in a joint operation that demonstrated the effectiveness of inter-chapter cooperation when properly coordinated. The Mezoa campaign required the Salamanders to adapt their flame-based tactics to environments where indiscriminate fire could damage critical manufacturing equipment worth more than entire planetary economies. Their Tech Marines worked closely with Adeptus Mechanicus personnel to identify which facilities could be defended through conventional weapons, while determining where flame weapons could be employed without risking irreparable damage to essential systems. This technical cooperation created mutual respect between the Salamanders and Mechanicus forces that facilitated more effective coordination throughout the campaign. The defense of Nocturne itself during the 13th Black Crusade represented one of the most significant challenges the chapter had faced since the Horus Heresy, as Chaos forces launched coordinated strikes against multiple Astartes homeworlds in an attempt to cripple Imperial resistance. The attack on Nocturne came without warning as a massive Chaos fleet emerged from the warp near the system's edge, their ships bearing the marks of multiple traitor legions united in their desire to eliminate one of the Imperium's most stalwart defenders. The Salamanders found themselves fighting for their very existence as enemy forces sought to destroy not only their chapter, but also the civilian population that had supported them for millennia. Chapter Master Tushan personally led the defense of Nocturne's orbital installations, deploying the chapter's fleet assets in a series of running battles that prevented the Chaos forces from achieving orbital supremacy while buying time for planetary defenses to prepare for the inevitable invasion. The space battles demonstrated the Salamanders' tactical flexibility as they adapted their preferred close-quarters combat doctrine to void warfare, using boarding actions and ramming attacks to offset their numerical disadvantage against the larger Chaos fleet. The chapter's battle barges and strike cruisers suffered heavy damage during these engagements, but their sacrifice preserved the planet's defensive capabilities for the ground campaign that followed. The era Indomitus brought unprecedented changes to the Salamanders as they received reinforcements of Primaris Space Marines, whose enhanced capabilities and new equipment required integration with existing chapter traditions and doctrine. The arrival of these new battle brothers created both opportunities and challenges, as their superior physical capabilities and advanced weapon systems provided significant tactical advantages, while their lack of familiarity with chapter culture required extensive orientation and training. Chapter Master Tushan approached the integration process with characteristic patience and wisdom, recognizing that successful assimilation would require time and careful attention to cultural as well as military considerations. The Primaris reinforcements brought with them new weapon systems and vehicle designs that complemented existing Salamander capabilities, while opening up tactical possibilities that had not previously been available. The Redemptor dreadnoughts proved particularly valuable for the chapter's siege warfare specialization, their enhanced firepower and improved mobility allowing them to engage enemy fortifications with unprecedented effectiveness. The Primaris Intercessor's bolt rifles provided increased range and stopping power compared to traditional bolt guns, while their enhanced armor protection allowed them to survive in hostile environments that would challenge even veteran Astartes. The integration of Primaris Marines into existing company structures required careful planning to maintain unit cohesion while maximizing the benefits of their enhanced capabilities. Veteran sergeants from traditional Astartes backgrounds worked closely with Primaris squad leaders to develop combined tactics that utilized both group strengths while minimizing the disadvantages created by different equipment sets and training backgrounds. The process created learning opportunities for both sides, as experienced Salamanders shared their cultural knowledge and specialized techniques, while Primaris Marines contributed their advanced training and tactical innovations. The Indomitus Crusade provided the first major test of the integrated Salamander forces, as they participated in the massive Imperial offensive that sought to reclaim territory lost during the 13th Black Crusade and establish new defensive lines against Chaos incursions. The Salamanders deployed alongside multiple other chapters in coordinated operations that spanned dozens of star systems, their expertise in siege warfare and urban combat proving valuable for the systematic reclamation of corrupted worlds. The campaign demonstrated the effectiveness of Primaris integration while maintaining the chapter's distinctive identity and tactical preferences. The battle for the Hive World Vigilus became a defining moment for the reconstituted Salamanders, as they faced off against multiple enemy factions in a complex multi-sided conflict that tested every aspect of their military capabilities. The planet's strategic location made it a crucial objective for Imperial, Chaos, and Orc forces, while Genestealer cult infiltration added another layer of complexity to an already challenging operational environment. The Salamanders found themselves fighting simultaneous campaigns against different enemy types while attempting to protect the massive civilian population caught in the crossfire of galactic warfare. Captain Adrax Agatone led the Salamander forces on Vigilus with tactical brilliance that demonstrated the chapter's continued evolution in response to changing strategic circumstances. His integration of traditional Salamander doctrine with Primaris capabilities created combined arms formations that proved devastatingly effective against enemy forces while maintaining the chapter's commitment to civilian protection. The Vigilus campaign showcased the Salamanders' ability to adapt their methods without compromising their values, proving that their humanitarian principles remained compatible with military effectiveness in the grim darkness of the 41st millennium. Tushan stands as the current chapter master of the Salamanders, his massive frame bearing the distinctive coal-black skin and glowing red eyes that mark him as a true son of Nocturne. His ascension to leadership came during one of the chapter's most challenging periods, when the previous chapter master fell during a desperate defense against Chaos Raiders, attempting to establish a foothold in the Nocturne system. Tushan's selection reflected not only his exceptional combat prowess and tactical acumen, but also his deep understanding of the philosophical principles that guide the Salamander's actions throughout the galaxy. His leadership style combines the methodical patience characteristic of his chapter with an iron determination that has seen the Salamanders through some of their darkest hours. The chapter master's personal equipment reflects both his status and the Salamander's emphasis on master craftsmanship, with his artificer armor incorporating heat-resistant ceramics and specialized life support systems that allow him to operate in environments that would challenge even standard Astartes protection. His Thunder Hammer, Forge Master, represents months of careful work by the chapter's finest artificers, its power field generators creating disruptive effects that can shatter even the most heavily armored opponents. The weapon's head bears intricate engravings depicting scenes from Nocturnian mythology, while its handle incorporates materials harvested from the deepest volcanic chambers of Mount Deathfire. Tushan's leadership during the Third War for Armageddon demonstrated his ability to coordinate large-scale operations, while maintaining the chapter's commitment to protecting civilian populations caught in the crossfire of galactic warfare. His deployment of Salamander companies across multiple hive cities maximized their impact on the overall defense effort, while ensuring that their specialized skills in urban combat and siege warfare provided the greatest benefit to Imperial forces. The chapter master's personal involvement in the most dangerous operations inspired his battle brothers to extraordinary feats of valor, as his presence on the battlefield served as a rallying point for Imperial forces facing overwhelming odds. The integration of Primaris reinforcements under Tushan's guidance showcased his adaptability and forward-thinking approach to chapter development, as he recognized both the opportunities and challenges presented by these enhanced warriors. Rather than simply incorporating the new battle brothers into existing structures, he worked with his senior officers to develop training programs that would allow traditional Astartes and Primaris Marines to operate together effectively while maintaining the cultural traditions that define Salamander identity. This careful approach to integration ensured that the chapter's expansion enhanced rather than diluted their distinctive character and capabilities. Tushan's strategic vision extends beyond immediate tactical concerns to encompass the long-term survival and effectiveness of his chapter in an increasingly hostile galaxy. His establishment of forward operating bases throughout the chapter's area of operations provides staging areas for rapid response to emerging threats, while creating networks of supply caches and repair facilities that enhance operational independence. These installations also serve as training centers where new recruits can develop their skills under the guidance of experienced veterans, ensuring continuity of chapter traditions and tactical doctrine across generations of battle brothers. Forgefather Heastan occupies a unique position within the Salamander's hierarchy, serving simultaneously as a company captain and the keeper of ancient knowledge regarding the lost artifacts of Vulkan. His quest to recover these legendary items has taken him across the galaxy, following fragmentary clues and ancient records that might lead to the discovery of weapons created by the Primarch himself. This dual role requires exceptional dedication and organizational skills, as Heastan must balance his responsibilities to his company with the broader mission that could determine the chapter's ultimate destiny. The Forgefather's expertise in ancient technology and archaeological investigation makes him invaluable for operations involving pre-Imperial ruins, space hulks, and other locations where lost artifacts might be hidden. His modified power armor incorporates specialized scanning equipment and analysis tools that allow him to identify and evaluate potential discoveries while maintaining full combat effectiveness in hostile environments. The servo-skull attendants that accompany him on missions carry additional sensors and recording devices, creating a mobile research laboratory that can operate in conditions where conventional archaeological methods would prove impossible. Heastan's recovery of the Spear of Vulkan during an expedition to the demon world of Drakasi represented one of the most significant discoveries in recent chapter history, validating his methods and providing concrete proof that the remaining artifacts could still be found. The operation required months of preparation and intelligence gathering, as the demon world's unstable reality made conventional navigation and communication impossible. The Forgefather led a strike force of veteran battle brothers through landscapes that shifted according to the whims of chaos entities, using his knowledge of ancient Nocturnian rituals and protective wards to maintain cohesion while pursuing their objective. The artifact's recovery came at tremendous cost, as the strike force faced not only demon opposition, but also the reality-warping effects of prolonged exposure to chaos influence. Several battle brothers were lost to temporal anomalies that aged them to dust in moments, while others fell victim to spatial distortions that transported them to unknown locations across the galaxy. Heastan himself suffered injuries that would have proven fatal to lesser warriors, his survival attributed to both his exceptional constitution and the protective effects of ancient talismans he carried from Nocturne's sacred sites. The Forgefather's ongoing quest has led him to establish networks of contacts throughout the Imperium, from rogue traders and explorator fleets to inquisitors and planetary governors who might possess information about ancient artifacts or unexplored locations. These relationships require careful maintenance and diplomatic skill, as many potential allies have their own agendas that may conflict with the Salamanders' objectives. Heastan's reputation for integrity and fair dealing has earned him respect among these diverse groups, creating opportunities for cooperation that might otherwise be impossible. The search for the remaining artifacts of Vulkan continues to drive Heastan's actions, with each recovered piece providing new clues about the locations and circumstances of the others. His analysis of the Spear of Vulkan revealed construction techniques and material compositions that narrow the possible origins of the remaining artifacts, while psychometric readings from chapter librarians have provided visions and impressions that guide his investigations. The Forgefather maintains detailed records of all discoveries and theories, creating a comprehensive database that future generations of salamanders can use to continue the quest if necessary. Captain Adrax Agatone of the Third Company exemplifies the modern salamander officer, his leadership combining traditional chapter values with tactical innovations developed during the era Indomitus. His company has served as a testing ground for new equipment and procedures, integrating Primaris reinforcements with veteran battle brothers while maintaining the aggressive close-quarters combat doctrine that defines salamander operations. Agatone's personal combat record includes victories against Chaos Space Marines, Orc warbands, and Tyrannid splinter fleets, demonstrating his versatility and adaptability in diverse combat environments. The captain's approach to urban warfare has influenced chapter doctrine throughout the organization, as his tactical innovations during the Vigilus campaign proved devastatingly effective against multiple enemy factions operating in complex metropolitan environments. His integration of traditional flame weapons with new Primaris equipment created combined arms formations that could clear buildings and underground complexes with unprecedented speed and efficiency. The techniques developed by his company have been adopted by other salamander formations, spreading throughout the chapter as standard operating procedures for similar environments. Agatone's leadership philosophy emphasizes personal example and shared sacrifice, with the captain regularly placing himself in the most dangerous positions during combat operations. His modified Gravis armor incorporates additional heat shielding and enhanced life support systems that allow him to operate in extreme environments while maintaining full tactical awareness and communication capabilities. The armor's flame projectors have been modified to use the enhanced fuel mixture developed by chapter artificers, creating distinctive green-tinged flames that have become his personal signature on battlefields across the galaxy. The captain's relationship with his battle brothers reflects the familial bonds that characterize salamander culture, as he takes personal responsibility for the welfare and development of every warrior under his command. His company maintains one of the highest morale ratings in the chapter, with individual battle brothers demonstrating exceptional loyalty and dedication that translates into superior combat performance. This unit cohesion has proven particularly valuable during extended campaigns where psychological stress and physical exhaustion might otherwise degrade fighting effectiveness. Brother Captain Brayarth Ashmantle serves the chapter from within the armored sarcophagus of a dreadnought, his ancient wisdom and combat experience making him one of the most respected figures in salamander history. His interment followed grievous injuries sustained during a boarding action against a Chaos battle barge, where his heroic actions saved dozens of battle brothers while ensuring the mission's success. The transition from mortal flesh to mechanical form required significant psychological adjustment, but Ashmantle's dedication to his chapter and its mission provided the strength necessary to accept his new existence. The Dreadnought's chassis incorporates specialized modifications that reflect both his personal preferences and the chapter's tactical requirements, with enhanced flame projectors and reinforced armor plating that allow him to serve as a mobile fortress during assault operations. His combat systems have been upgraded multiple times over the centuries, incorporating new technologies and weapon systems, while maintaining the distinctive salamander aesthetic that marks him as a son of Vulkan. The sarcophagus itself bears inscriptions from the Promethean Creed and decorative elements crafted by the chapter's finest artificers. Ashmantle's tactical expertise proves invaluable during siege operations and urban warfare, as his centuries of experience provide insights that younger officers might overlook in the heat of battle. His ability to coordinate multiple units while engaging enemy forces directly makes him a force multiplier whose presence can determine the outcome of entire engagements. The psychological impact of his appearance on enemy forces often proves as valuable as his direct combat capabilities, as few opponents can maintain their composure when facing a walking avatar of Astartes' determination and firepower. The ancient warrior's role as mentor and teacher extends beyond simple tactical instruction to encompass the preservation and transmission of chapter culture and traditions. His memories span centuries of salamander history, including personal interactions with legendary figures and participation in campaigns that have become foundational elements of chapter identity. Younger battle brothers seek his counsel on matters ranging from equipment modification to philosophical questions about their duties and obligations as protectors of humanity. Chaplain Xavier of the Fourth Company serves as both spiritual guide and keeper of traditions, his dual role requiring exceptional dedication to the principles that define salamander identity. His training encompassed not only the standard chaplain curriculum, but also extensive study of Nocturnian customs and philosophical traditions that predate the chapter's founding. This cultural knowledge allows him to maintain the connections between ancient tribal practices and modern Astartes doctrine, ensuring that the chapter's humanitarian values remain relevant and applicable to contemporary challenges. The chaplain's Crozius Arcanum incorporates materials from Nocturne's sacred sites, its construction following ancient patterns that connect him to the spiritual traditions of his homeworld. The weapon's power field generators create effects that are both physically devastating and symbolically significant, as their activation produces flames that echo the volcanic fires of Mount Deathfire. His Rosarius provides protection against both physical attacks and psychic assaults, its force field generators powered by faith as much as technology. Xavier's battlefield presence serves as a rallying point for Salamander forces facing overwhelming odds or morally challenging situations, where their humanitarian principles might conflict with tactical necessities. His ability to inspire courage and determination in his battle brothers has proven decisive in numerous engagements, as his words and personal example remind them of their higher purpose beyond simple military victory. The chaplain's prayers and benedictions provide psychological comfort that enhances unit morale while reinforcing the cultural bonds that unite the chapter. The preservation of chapter traditions requires constant vigilance and active effort, as the passage of millennia and the pressures of continuous warfare threaten to erode the cultural elements that distinguish the Salamanders from other Astartes formations. Xavier works closely with company captains and veteran sergeants to ensure that new recruits receive proper instruction in chapter customs and philosophical principles, while his own example demonstrates how these ancient values can be applied to modern challenges. His efforts help maintain the continuity of identity that allows the Salamanders to remain true to Vulkan's vision despite the changing circumstances of their service. Master of the Forge Mirzan oversees the chapter's technical operations from his workshops on Prometheus, his expertise in manufacturing and engineering making him responsible for maintaining the equipment and weapons that enable Salamander operations throughout the galaxy. His position requires not only exceptional technical knowledge, but also administrative skills necessary to coordinate the complex logistics of supporting multiple companies deployed across vast distances. The Master of the Forge works closely with tech marines and artificers throughout the chapter, ensuring that their combined efforts maintain the technological superiority that gives the Salamanders their tactical advantages. The workshops under Mirzan's supervision produce weapons and equipment that exceed Imperial standard patterns in both quality and capability, incorporating innovations developed through centuries of Salamander experimentation and refinement. His personal projects include the development of enhanced flame weapon fuel mixtures and improved armor materials that provide better protection against the exotic weapons employed by the chapter's enemies. These innovations are carefully tested and evaluated before being approved for general use, ensuring that improvements enhance rather than compromise operational effectiveness. Mirzan's relationship with the Adeptus Mechanicus reflects the complex balance between cooperation and independence that characterizes the Salamander's approach to technology and manufacturing. While maintaining cordial relations with Mars and its Forge World allies, he insists on preserving the chapter's ability to develop and produce their own equipment according to their specific requirements and cultural preferences. This independence has occasionally created tensions with Mechanicus officials who prefer standardized patterns and centralized control, but the quality and effectiveness of Salamander equipment generally overcomes such bureaucratic concerns. The Master of the Forge's training programs ensure that every battle brother possesses the technical skills necessary to maintain and modify their equipment according to personal preferences and mission requirements. These educational efforts extend beyond simple maintenance procedures to encompass the theoretical knowledge and practical techniques that allow individual warriors to innovate and adapt their gear for specific challenges. The resulting technical competence throughout the chapter enhances their operational independence while maintaining the cultural traditions that connect craftsmanship with service to humanity. Veteran Sergeant Herath Shen of the 2nd Company represents the backbone of Salamander leadership, his decades of service providing the experience and wisdom necessary to guide younger battle brothers while maintaining the tactical excellence that defines the chapter's combat effectiveness. His personal combat record includes participation in dozens of major campaigns and hundreds of smaller operations, creating a wealth of practical knowledge that proves invaluable during planning and execution phases of complex missions. Shen's ability to adapt standard tactics to unique circumstances has made him a sought-after advisor for operations requiring innovative approaches to challenging objectives. The sergeant's equipment reflects both his personal preferences and the practical lessons learned through extensive combat experience, with modifications and customizations that enhance effectiveness while maintaining reliability under adverse conditions. His bolt pistol incorporates targeting systems and ammunition feed mechanisms that improve accuracy and rate of fire, while his chainsword features enhanced cutting elements and reinforced construction that allow it to function effectively against heavily armored opponents. These modifications represent years of careful work and testing, creating weapons that perfectly suit his fighting style and tactical requirements. Shen's role as mentor and teacher extends throughout his company and beyond, as younger sergeants and battle brothers seek his guidance on matters ranging from tactical decision-making to equipment maintenance. His training methods emphasize practical application over theoretical knowledge, using realistic scenarios and hands-on exercises that prepare his students for the challenges they will face during actual combat operations. The respect he commands among his peers reflects not only his combat achievements, but also his dedication to passing on the knowledge and skills that ensure the chapter's continued effectiveness. The sergeant's understanding of Salamander culture and traditions makes him an unofficial keeper of chapter customs, as his long service has allowed him to witness the evolution of practices and philosophies that define the organization's identity. His stories and explanations help new recruits understand the historical context behind current procedures, while his personal example demonstrates how ancient values can be applied to contemporary challenges. This cultural knowledge proves particularly valuable during operations where the chapter's humanitarian principles must be balanced against tactical necessities and strategic objectives. The ancient prophecies that speak of Vulkan's return emerge from the deepest traditions of Nocturne itself, their origins tracing back to the volcanic world's earliest human settlements and the shamanic practices that helped those first colonists survive in their hostile environment. These prophetic texts, carved into obsidian tablets and preserved within the sacred chambers beneath each sanctuary city, describe a time of ultimate darkness when humanity will face extinction from threats both within and without. The prophecies speak in the symbolic language of fire and forge, describing signs and portents that will herald the return of the Forge Father when his children need him most desperately. The most significant of these ancient texts, known as the Tome of Fire, describes 9 great trials that humanity must endure before Vulkan's return becomes possible. These trials encompass everything from massive orc invasions and chaos incursions to internal corruption and the failure of Imperial institutions that protect human civilization. The prophetic language uses metaphors drawn from Nocturnian volcanic activity, describing periods of dormancy followed by explosive awakening that mirrors the geological cycles of their homeworld. Salamander chaplains have spent millennia studying these texts, attempting to correlate their symbolic descriptions with actual historical events and contemporary threats. The prophecies place particular emphasis on the role of the artifacts of Vulkan in facilitating their Primarch's return, describing these legendary items as keys that must be gathered and properly arranged before the Forge Father can emerge from his self-imposed exile. Each artifact represents a different aspect of Vulkan's nature and philosophy, from the creative power embodied in the gauntlet of the Forge to the protective strength symbolized by the Spear of Vulkan. The ancient texts suggest that these items must be brought together in a specific configuration at a location of great significance, though the exact details remain obscured by layers of symbolic language that resist straightforward interpretation. The Salamander's understanding of these prophecies has evolved considerably over the millennia, influenced by their experiences during major conflicts and the gradual recovery of lost artifacts that provide new insights into their Primarch's intentions. The chapter's librarians have developed specialized techniques for interpreting prophetic visions and dreams that sometimes provide guidance regarding the location and significance of missing artifacts. These psychic impressions often come during moments of great stress or danger, when the barriers between the material realm and the deeper currents of fate become temporarily permeable. The recovery of each artifact has been accompanied by phenomena that seem to validate the prophetic traditions, from unusual astronomical alignments to manifestations of flame that appear without natural explanation. When Forgefather Heastan claimed the Spear of Vulkan from the demon world of Drakasi, witnesses reported that the weapon's activation created a pillar of green fire that could be seen from orbit, while the Primarch's name was heard whispered in the flames by battle brothers who had never learned the ancient Nocturnian dialects. These supernatural confirmations have strengthened the chapter's conviction that the prophecies represent genuine divine guidance rather than mere superstition or wishful thinking. The quest to recover the remaining artifacts of Vulkan has become the defining mission of the modern Salamanders, influencing their strategic decisions and operational priorities in ways that sometimes conflict with immediate Imperial needs. Company captains must balance their obligations to defend Imperial worlds and support broader military campaigns against the long-term imperative of gathering the items necessary for their Primarch's return. This tension has occasionally created friction with Imperial commanders who view the artifact quest as a distraction from more pressing military objectives, but the Salamanders remain convinced that Vulkan's return will ultimately provide benefits that far outweigh any temporary inconveniences. The Obsidian Chariot was recovered from the space Hulk Flame of Perdition during a boarding action that cost the lives of an entire Terminator squad, their sacrifice enabling Heastan to reach the artifact's resting place within the Hulk's twisted corridors. The ancient vehicle had been sealed within a stasis field that preserved it perfectly despite millennia of exposure to the warp's corrupting influence, though the psychic residue of its long isolation required extensive purification rituals before it could be safely activated. The chariot's recovery provided new insights into Vulkan's craftsmanship and intentions, as its internal systems contained data cores with information about the locations and purposes of other artifacts. The Engine of Woes proved more challenging to locate and recover, as the prophecies indicated that it had been hidden on a world that would be consumed by its own star before the artifact could be claimed. This cryptic description led Heastan and his research teams to investigate systems where stellar instability threatened planetary populations, eventually identifying the mining world of Caldera Prime as the most likely candidate. The planet's red giant primary had begun expanding toward its final collapse, creating surface conditions that made conventional exploration impossible, while the local population struggled to evacuate their industrial facilities. The recovery operation required the Salamanders to work against time, as solar radiation levels increased beyond the tolerance of even their enhanced physiology and specialized equipment. Deep mining operations located the Engine of Woes buried beneath kilometers of volcanic rock, its massive bulk requiring specialized excavation equipment and heavy lift vehicles to extract from its underground chamber. The artifact's activation systems had been damaged by millennia of geological pressure, necessitating careful restoration work that had to be completed, while the planet's surface temperature continued to rise toward levels that would make human survival impossible. The Unbound Flame represents one of the most enigmatic of Vulkan's creations, its nature and purpose remaining unclear despite extensive study by the chapter's most learned artificers and librarians. The artifact appears to be a containment device for some form of exotic energy, its crystalline structure containing forces that defy conventional analysis while radiating heat signatures that suggest temperatures exceeding those found in stellar cores. The prophecies describe the Unbound Flame as the key to understanding Vulkan's ultimate plan, though they provide no clear guidance regarding its intended use or the circumstances under which it should be activated. The search for this particular artifact has led the Salamanders to investigate locations throughout the galaxy where unusual energy readings or unexplained phenomena might indicate its presence. Ancient battlefields, forgotten research facilities, and worlds touched by supernatural forces have all been examined for signs of the Unbound Flame's distinctive energy signature. The quest has brought the chapter into contact with various Imperial organizations, from the Adeptus Mechanicus research teams studying anomalous technology to Inquisition forces investigating potential chaos corruption that might be masquerading as legitimate artifact sites. The Salamanders' interpretation of the prophecies has been influenced by their experiences during major galactic conflicts, as events like the Horus Heresy, the Age of Apostasy, and the 13th Black Crusade seem to fulfill some of the darker predictions contained within the ancient texts. The chapter's scholars have developed elaborate correlation charts that attempt to match prophetic descriptions with historical events, creating timelines that suggest the current era represents the final phase before Vulkan's prophesied return. These interpretations provide hope and motivation for battle brothers facing increasingly desperate circumstances, but they also create pressure to complete the artifact recovery mission before time runs out. The role of the chapter's librarians in interpreting prophetic visions has become increasingly important as the quest for the remaining artifacts continues. These psychers undergo specialized training that teaches them to distinguish between genuine prophetic insights and the false visions that can be generated by chaos influence or simple wishful thinking. The techniques developed by Salamander librarians combine traditional psychic disciplines with cultural knowledge drawn from Nocturnian shamanic practices, creating a unique approach to divination that has proven remarkably accurate in identifying artifact locations and understanding their significance. The librarians work closely with Forgefather Heestan and other senior officers to analyze new information and refine their understanding of the prophecy's meaning, their psychic abilities providing insights that complement conventional research methods. Meditation sessions conducted in the sacred chambers beneath Nocturne's sanctuary cities sometimes produce visions that reveal hidden aspects of the artifact's purposes or provide clues about their current locations. These prophetic experiences are carefully documented and analyzed, creating an ever-growing database of information that guides the chapter's ongoing quest. The psychological impact of the prophecies on individual battle brothers varies considerably, with some finding great comfort in the promise of their Primarch's eventual return, while others struggle with the uncertainty and pressure created by their unfulfilled expectations. The chapter's chaplains work to maintain morale and focus by emphasizing the importance of fulfilling their current duties while preparing for the greater challenges that Vulkan's return will bring. This balanced approach helps prevent the kind of fanatical obsession that might compromise the chapter's effectiveness while maintaining the sense of purpose that drives their continued efforts. The prophecies describe Vulkan's return as a moment of transformation that will affect not only the Salamanders but humanity as a whole, suggesting that the Primarch's reappearance will herald a new age of technological advancement and spiritual renewal. These descriptions use language that speaks of forges rekindled and flames that burn away corruption, while preserving everything pure and valuable within human civilization. The symbolic nature of these passages makes their literal interpretation difficult, but Salamander scholars believe they indicate that Vulkan's return will coincide with major changes in the galaxy's political and military situation. The chapter's preparations for their Primarch's return encompass both practical measures and spiritual preparation, as they work to ensure that they will be worthy of his leadership when the prophesied moment arrives. Training programs emphasize the development of craftsmanship skills alongside military proficiency, ensuring that every battle brother possesses the technical knowledge and cultural understanding that Vulkan valued in his sons. The chapter's artificers work to preserve and enhance the manufacturing capabilities that will be necessary to support their Primarch's plans, whatever those might prove to be. The establishment of artifact repositories and research facilities throughout Salamander territory reflects their commitment to completing the recovery mission while preparing for the challenges that will follow Vulkan's return. These installations serve multiple purposes, from providing secure storage for recovered artifacts to serving as centers for the scholarly research that continues to refine their understanding of the prophecies. The facilities also function as training centers where battle brothers can develop the specialized skills that will be necessary for implementing their Primarch's vision for humanity's future. The Salamanders' relationship with other Imperial institutions has been influenced by their focus on the prophetic mission, as they seek allies and resources that might assist in recovering the remaining artifacts while avoiding entanglements that could compromise their primary objective. The chapter maintains cordial relations with organizations like the Adeptus Mechanicus and various Inquisition ordos, but they carefully guard information about their quest to prevent interference from groups that might not understand the prophecy's significance. This selective cooperation has sometimes created tensions, but the Salamanders remain convinced that secrecy is necessary to protect their mission from those who would exploit or corrupt it. The impact of the artifact quest on the chapter's military operations has been generally positive, as the search has led them to locations and situations where their intervention has provided significant benefits to Imperial forces and civilian populations. The recovery missions often involve combat against Chaos forces, Xenos raiders, or other threats that would have posed dangers to nearby Imperial worlds even without the artifact connection. The Salamanders' reputation for effectiveness and reliability has been enhanced by these operations, creating goodwill that facilitates their continued quest while fulfilling their obligations to defend humanity. The prophecies suggest that Vulkan's return will occur during humanity's darkest hour, when conventional solutions have failed, and only the intervention of the Primarch himself can preserve human civilization from complete destruction. This timing creates both urgency and uncertainty for the Salamanders, as they cannot predict when the prophesied moment will arrive or whether they will have completed their preparations in time. The current state of the galaxy, with its endless wars and growing threats, certainly seems to match the conditions described in the ancient texts, but the symbolic language of the prophecies makes precise timing impossible to determine. The Salamanders occupy a unique position among the 1,000 chapters of the Adeptus Astartes, distinguished not merely by their tactical preferences or homeworld's harsh environment, but by their unwavering commitment to protecting civilian populations, even when such protection conflicts with broader strategic objectives. This humanitarian philosophy sets them apart from brother chapters who view baseline humans as resources to be expended in service of larger Imperial goals, creating a reputation that extends far beyond their official area of operations. Planetary governors throughout the Segmentum Solar specifically request Salamander assistance when facing threats that endanger civilian populations, knowing that these space marines will prioritize evacuation and protection over rapid military solutions that might achieve objectives at the cost of innocent lives. The chapter's approach to compliance operations demonstrates this distinctive philosophy in practice, as they consistently choose graduated responses that minimize casualties and preserve infrastructure over the overwhelming force applications favored by more aggressive formations. During the pacification of the rebellious Hive world Mordian 7, the Salamanders spent months in negotiation and demonstration rather than launching immediate orbital bombardments that would have resolved the situation in days. Their patience ultimately proved more effective than conventional approaches, as the planetary population voluntarily returned to Imperial compliance after witnessing the Salamanders' commitment to protecting non-combatants during limited military actions against the rebel leadership. This protective instinct manifests in countless operational decisions that collectively define the chapter's character and influence their relationships with other Imperial forces. Salamander commanders routinely accept higher casualty rates among their own forces rather than employ tactics that would endanger civilian populations, viewing such sacrifices as necessary costs of maintaining their humanitarian principles. Guard regiments and PDF forces that have served alongside the Salamanders consistently report improved morale and combat effectiveness, as the Space Marines' example inspires baseline humans to greater efforts, while their protective presence reduces fear and panic among civilian populations. The Salamanders' influence on their successor chapters represents one of their most significant contributions to the broader Imperium, as the Promethean ideals of craftsmanship, endurance, and protection have spread throughout their genetic lineage, despite the challenges of maintaining cultural continuity across vast distances and extended time periods. The Storm Giants, Black Dragons, and Iron Drakes all display characteristics that clearly derive from their salamander heritage, though each chapter has adapted these core principles to their own operational environments and strategic requirements. The process of cultural transmission occurs through formal exchanges of personnel, shared training exercises, and the informal networks that connect chapters sharing common genetic origins. The Storm Giants have developed the Salamander's protective philosophy into a comprehensive disaster response capability, specializing in operations that combine military objectives with humanitarian relief efforts. Their homeworld of Sorrows experiences regular seismic activity that requires constant evacuation and reconstruction efforts, creating a population uniquely adapted to rapid response and emergency management. The chapter's battle brothers serve dual roles as warriors and civil engineers, their enhanced capabilities allowing them to construct defensive positions and evacuation routes while engaging enemy forces simultaneously. This integration of military and civilian functions reflects the Salamander emphasis on using strength to protect those who cannot protect themselves. The Black Dragons have focused on the Salamander's craftsmanship traditions, while adapting them to their own unique physiological characteristics, developing specialized equipment and techniques that accommodate their bone blade mutations. Their artificers have created weapons and armor that incorporate their natural weapons as integral components, turning what other chapters might view as genetic flaws into tactical advantages. The chapter's approach to equipment modification and personal customization clearly derives from Salamander traditions, though their isolation and unique circumstances have created innovations that even their parent chapter finds remarkable. The Iron Drakes maintain perhaps the closest connection to original Salamander doctrine, their operations consistently reflecting the methodical approach and protective instincts that characterize their progenitors. The chapter's recruitment practices emphasize candidates who demonstrate exceptional courage in protecting others, while their training programs incorporate extensive instruction in craftsmanship and technical skills. Iron Drake Battle Brothers regularly undertake pilgrimages to Nocturne, where they study with Salamander artificers and participate in cultural ceremonies that reinforce their connection to the broader tradition. The transmission of Promethean ideals faces constant challenges from the practical realities of galactic warfare, where humanitarian principles must compete with tactical necessities and strategic imperatives that often demand harsh choices. Successor chapters operating in regions where chaos, corruption, or Xenos infiltration pose existential threats sometimes find their protective instincts compromised by the need for absolute security measures that leave little room for mercy or restraint. The Salamanders work to maintain communication with these distant cousins, providing guidance and support that helps them balance competing obligations while preserving the core values that define their shared heritage. The integration of Primaris Space Marines into the Salamanders represents both an unprecedented opportunity and a significant challenge, as these enhanced warriors bring superior physical capabilities and advanced equipment while lacking the cultural foundation that has sustained the chapter for 10 millennia. The Rubicon Primaris procedure has allowed some veteran battle brothers to undergo transformation into Primaris Marines, creating bridges between the old and new generations that facilitate cultural transmission and tactical integration. These transformed veterans serve as living examples of how enhanced capabilities can be combined with traditional values, demonstrating that technological advancement need not compromise the humanitarian principles that define Salamander identity. Chapter Master Tushin has approached Primaris integration with characteristic patience and methodical planning, recognizing that successful assimilation requires more than simple tactical training or equipment familiarization. The new Battle Brothers undergo extensive cultural education that encompasses Nocturnian history, Promethean philosophy, and the crafting traditions that form such an integral part of chapter identity. This comprehensive approach ensures that Primaris Marines understand not only what they are expected to do, but why these expectations exist and how they connect to the broader mission of protecting humanity. The enhanced physical capabilities of Primaris Marines have opened new tactical possibilities for the Salamanders, as their superior strength and endurance allow them to operate in environments that would challenge even veteran Astartes. The Intercessor Squad's bolt rifles provide increased range and stopping power compared to traditional bolt guns, while their enhanced armor protection allows them to advance through hostile fire that would suppress conventional infantry. These advantages prove particularly valuable during urban warfare and siege operations, where the Salamander's specialized tactics can be applied with even greater effectiveness. The integration process has also revealed opportunities for innovation and improvement in traditional Salamander equipment and procedures, as Primaris Marines bring fresh perspectives and advanced training that complement existing capabilities. The Mark X power armor worn by Primaris Marines incorporates design features that can be adapted for traditional Astartes equipment, while their tactical doctrines include techniques that enhance the effectiveness of flame weapons and close-quarters combat formations. This cross-pollination of ideas and methods has revitalized aspects of chapter doctrine that had remained unchanged for centuries. The Redemptor dreadnoughts assigned to Primaris formations have proven particularly valuable for the Salamander's siege warfare specialization, their enhanced firepower and improved mobility allowing them to engage enemy fortifications with unprecedented effectiveness. These war machines incorporate targeting systems and weapon configurations that complement the chapter's tactical preferences, while their pilots undergo the same cultural indoctrination as other Primaris Marines to ensure continuity of values and objectives. The psychological impact of these towering war engines on enemy forces often proves as valuable as their direct combat capabilities. The Salamander's role in the current era reflects both the continuity of their ancient mission and their adaptation to the changing strategic environment of the 42nd millennium. The Great Rift's appearance has created new challenges and opportunities, as the galaxy's division into Imperium Nihilus and Imperium Sanctus has disrupted traditional communication and supply networks while creating isolated regions where the chapter's self-sufficiency and protective instincts prove particularly valuable. Salamander companies operating on the dark side of the Rift have maintained their effectiveness despite being cut off from Terra and their home base, demonstrating the wisdom of Vulkan's emphasis on independence and adaptability. The Indomitus Crusade provided the Salamanders with opportunities to demonstrate their enhanced capabilities while fulfilling their traditional role as protectors of humanity, as they participated in the massive Imperial offensive that sought to reclaim territory lost during the 13th Black Crusade. Their expertise in siege warfare and urban combat proved invaluable during the systematic liberation of corrupted worlds, while their commitment to protecting civilian populations helped stabilize newly reclaimed territories by maintaining local support for Imperial authority. The Crusade's success validated the integration of Primaris reinforcements, while demonstrating that the chapter's core values remained relevant and effective in the changing strategic environment. The ongoing Vigilus campaign has become a defining test for the modern Salamanders, as they face multiple enemy factions in a complex multi-sided conflict that requires all their tactical flexibility and cultural wisdom. The planet's strategic importance makes it a crucial objective for Imperial, Chaos, and Xenos forces, while Genestealer cult infiltration adds layers of complexity that challenge conventional military solutions. The Salamanders have adapted their protective philosophy to this environment by establishing secure zones where civilian populations can find refuge, while their military forces engage the various threats that contest control of the world. Captain Adrax Agatone's leadership during the Vigilus campaign exemplifies the evolution of Salamander doctrine in response to contemporary challenges, as his tactical innovations demonstrate how traditional values can be applied through new methods and enhanced capabilities. His integration of Primaris and traditional Astartes formations has created combined arms units that prove devastatingly effective against enemy forces while maintaining the chapter's commitment to civilian protection. The techniques developed during this campaign are being studied and adopted throughout the chapter, ensuring that lessons learned in this crucial theater benefit all Salamander operations. The chapter's continued vigil as humanity's guardians extends beyond their immediate military operations to encompass broader efforts at preserving human civilization and culture in an increasingly hostile galaxy. Their artificers work not only to create weapons and equipment, but also to preserve artistic and technological achievements that might otherwise be lost during the constant warfare that characterizes the 42nd millennium. The workshops on Prometheus contain archives of human knowledge and creativity that represent irreplaceable treasures, maintained by battle brothers who view this preservation work as essential to their protective mission. The Salamanders' network of allies and supporters has grown throughout their 10 millennia of service, creating relationships that extend far beyond their official area of operations and provide resources that enhance their effectiveness across the galaxy. Planetary governors who have witnessed their commitment to protecting civilian populations often provide intelligence, supplies, and logistical support that enables Salamander operations in distant sectors. Rogue trader dynasties value their reputation for integrity and fair dealing, creating opportunities for cooperation that benefit both parties while advancing the broader Imperial cause. The chapter's influence on Imperial military doctrine continues to grow as other organizations recognize the effectiveness of their protective approach to warfare and civilian relations. Guard regiments that have served alongside the Salamanders often adopt modified versions of their tactical procedures, while PDF forces throughout the Imperium request training assistance that helps them better protect the populations they serve. This gradual spread of Salamander influence represents a form of cultural victory that complements their military achievements while advancing their fundamental mission of protecting humanity. The quest for the remaining artifacts of Vulkan continues to drive the chapter's strategic decisions and operational priorities, as Forgefather Heestan and his research teams pursue leads that might reveal the locations of these legendary items. Each recovered artifact provides new insights into their Primarch's intentions, while bringing them closer to the prophesied moment of his return. The search has led the Salamanders to locations throughout the galaxy where their intervention has provided significant benefits to Imperial forces and civilian populations, demonstrating that their quest serves broader purposes beyond simple artifact recovery. The prophecies that speak of Vulkan's return provide hope and motivation for battle brothers facing increasingly desperate circumstances, as the current state of the galaxy seems to match many of the conditions described in the ancient Nocturnian texts. The Great Rift's appearance, the resurgence of chaos forces, and the growing threats posed by various Xeno species all suggest that humanity approaches the darkest hour that will herald the Forge Father's emergence from his long exile. The Salamanders maintain their preparations for this prophesied moment while fulfilling their current obligations, ensuring that they will be worthy of their Primarch's leadership when the time comes. As the 42nd millennium unfolds with its unprecedented challenges and opportunities, the Salamanders stand ready to face whatever threats emerge while maintaining their unwavering commitment to protecting the innocent and preserving human civilization. Their integration of ancient wisdom with new capabilities, their balance of military effectiveness with humanitarian principles, and their dedication to the long-term welfare of humanity position them as guardians whose vigilance will endure regardless of the galaxy's changing circumstances. The legacy of Vulkan lives on in his sons, who carry the flame of hope through the darkness that threatens to consume all that humanity has built among the stars. The chapter's future remains inextricably linked to their past, as the values established by their Primarch during the Great Crusade continue to guide their actions in an age when such principles are often viewed as luxuries that few can afford. Yet the Salamanders have proven repeatedly that compassion and strength are not mutually exclusive, that protecting the innocent enhances rather than compromises military effectiveness, and that the preservation of human dignity remains possible even in the grim darkness of the far future. They stand as living proof that the best aspects of humanity can survive and flourish even in the most hostile environments, their example inspiring others to maintain hope when despair seems the only rational response to the galaxy's endless horrors. In the forges of Prometheus and the volcanic peaks of Nocturne, in the distant battlefields where they fight and the civilian populations they protect, the Salamanders embody the eternal flame that no darkness can extinguish. They are the guardians of humanity's future, the keepers of ancient wisdom, and the living embodiment of their Primarch's vision for what the Adeptus Astartes could become. As long as they endure, as long as they maintain their vigil, humanity will never be without protectors who value every human life and fight not merely for conquest or glory, but for the preservation of all that makes existence meaningful in a universe that offers little mercy to the weak or unprepared.